In the shadowed halls of Ravenwood Manor, a scream shatters the night, and a butler lies dead, clutching a mysterious puzzle box. Why did an anonymous letter summon Hercule Poirot to this sinister game of wits? Who among the glamorous actress, the brooding nephew, or the secretive hostess hides a deadly secret? Cryptic clues, hidden passages, and a web of lies unravel Poirot's little gray cell's face, a puzzle that defies all rules. Will he unmask a killer before the shadows claim another victim? Chapter 1. The enigmatic invitation. The late autumn sun hung low over London, casting a golden haze through the fog that clung to the streets like a conspirator's cloak. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit, adjusted his Homburg hat and paused at the corner of Whitehaven Mansions, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the cobblestones. The air carried the crisp bite of November, and the faint scent of coal smoke mingled with the perfume of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor. Poirot's mustache twitched as he surveyed the bustling scene cabbies, shouting, newsboys hawking evening editions, and a gaggle of schoolchildren darting through the throng. Yet his mind was elsewhere, fixed on the peculiar missive that had arrived that morning. In his hand, he held an envelope of thick, cream-colored vellum, its surface embossed with a delicate filigree that spoke of wealth and intention. A letter, within, penned in an elegant, almost theatrical script, had invited him to Ravenwood Manor, a secluded estate in the Sussex countryside, for a weekend of intellectual games and stimulating company. No signature adorned the page, only a cryptic, flourishes stylized raven clutching a key. The anonymity intrigued Poirot, for he was not a man easily swayed by riddles. Yet this one bore the hallmarks of a challenge crafted for his singular mind. Its little gray cells, as he so fondly called them, were already humming with anticipation. Mon ami, you are certain this is not some elaborate prank? Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's steadfast companion, strode beside him, his overcoat flapping in the breeze. Hastings' honest face, framed by a neatly trimmed mustache, bore a mix of curiosity and skepticism. An unsigned letter, a mysterious mannered, sounds like something out of one of Mrs. Christie's novels. Poirot's eyes twinkled with amusement. Hastings, my dear friend, you underestimate the precision of the human mind. This letter is no jest. It is a summons, carefully composed to pique the curiosity of Hercule Poirot. And I, mon cher, do not disappoint those who seek to test me. Hastings chuckled, though his brow furrowed. All the same, I'd feel better if you knew who sent it. Ravenwood Manor, you say? Never heard of it. Nor I, Poirot admitted, tucking the envelope into his pocket. But that, Hastings, is precisely why we must go. The unknown is the canvas upon which the truth paints its masterpiece. By noon, they were aboard a train rattling through the rolling hills of Sussex. The city's clamor replaced by the rhythmic clatter of wheels and the occasional whistle of steam. Poirot sat by the window, his gloved hands folded over a silver-topped cane, his gaze fixed on the passing landscape fields of fading green, hedgerows dusted with frost, and the occasional spire of a village church piercing the skyline. Hastings, meanwhile, buried himself in a newspaper, muttering about the latest cricket scores. Poirot, Hastings said, folding the paper. What do you make of this intellectual games business? Sounds like a lot of highbrow nonsense. To me, puzzles, ciphers, that sort of thing. Perhaps, Poirot replied, his voice soft but laced with excitement. Consider, Hastings, the mind that crafts such an invitation. It is not merely a game they propose, but a duel of intellects. And I, Hercule Poirot, am no stranger to such contests. The train slowed as it approached a small, ivy-covered station marked Ravenwood Halt. A carriage awaited them, its driver, a taciturn man with a weathered face and eyes that seemed to see more than he let on. The journey to Ravenwood Manor took them along a winding road. past ancient oaks and a crumbling stone wall that hinted at the estate's age. As the carriage crested a hill, the manor came into view, a sprawling Gothic pile of turrets and gables, its windows glowing like embers against the dusk. Ivy clung to its walls, and a solitary raven perched atop a chimney, its black eyes glinting as if in recognition. Rather ominous, don't you think? Hastings murmured, peering out the carriage window. Atmosphere, Hastings, Poirot said, his tone almost gleeful. It is the perfect stage for a mystery. A carriage rolled to a stop before a set of iron gates, a cowing design echoing the raven Anki motif of the letter. A footman, stiff in his livery, ushered them into a grand entrance hall where a chandelier cast flickering shadows across marble floors and oak-paneled walls. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors gazed down, their eyes seeming to follow the newcomers. The air was heavy with a scent of polished wood and beeswax, undercut by a faint, inexplicable chill. "Welcome, gentlemen," came a voice, smooth and measured, from the top of a sweeping staircase. Lady Evelyn Carver, the mistress of Ravenwood Manor, descended with the grace of a woman accustomed to command. Her silver hair was swept into an elegant chignon, and her emerald gown shimmered in the candlelight. Yet her eyes, sharp and calculating, betrayed a tension that belied her hospitable smile. "Sir Poirot, Captain Hastings, it is an honor to have you among us." Poirot bowed, his mustache curling slightly. "The honor, madame, is mine." "Your invitation was most compelling." Lady Evelyn's smile tightened, but she gestured toward a parlor where the other guests awaited. "Come, meet our little gathering. I trust you'll find the company as stimulating as promised." The parlor was a study in opulence, velvet drapes, a roaring fire, and a long table set with crystal and silver. 5 figures turned to greet the newcomers, each a distinct silhouette against the firelight. Victor Carver, Lady Evelyn's nephew, was a tall, brooding man in his 30s, his dark eyes restless and his jaw set with a hint of defiance. Colonel Reginald Thorne, retired from the Indian Army, stood ramrod straight, his white mustache bristling as he clutched a glass of brandy. Miss Clara Duval, a glamorous actress with a cascade of auburn hair, lounged with theatrical ease, her scarlet lips curved in a knowing smile. Dr. Ernest Langley, K., nervous scholar with wire-rimmed spectacles, fidgeted with a notebook, his fingers stained with ink. And finally, Mrs. Beatrice Harrell, a widow with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes, sat knitting, her needles clicking like a metronome. "Quite the assembly," Hastings whispered to Poirot, who merely nodded, his gaze darting from face to face, cataloging every detail the way Victor avoided his aunt's eyes. The colonel's grip on his glass, Clara's practiced charm, Langley's twitching hands, St. Beatrice's unwavering stare. Dinner was a lavish affair, with courses of pheasant, truffled potatoes, and a claret that Poirot pronounced acceptable, but not exceptional. Conversation flowed, though it was laced with undercurrents. Lady Evelyn spoke of the manor's history, its origins, tracing back to a medieval knight who built it as a fortress. Victor, when pressed, mentioned his work as an architect, though his tone was evasive. Clara regaled the group with tales of her West End triumphs, her laughter a touch too bright. The colonel reminisced about his campaigns, while Dr. Langley stammered through a lecture on medieval cryptography. Earning a yawn from Beatrice, who muttered about bookish nonsense, Poirot, ever the observer, said little, his attention fixed on the interplay of glances and gestures. He noted how Lady Evelyn's hand trembled slightly when Victor mentioned his late father, her brother-in-law. He saw the colonel's eyes narrow at the mention of a local smuggling legend, and he caught Clara's fleeting glance toward Dr. Langley, who blushed and dropped his fork. As the dessert plates were cleared, Lady Evelyn rose, clapping her hands. "My friends, the evening's entertainment awaits. I've arranged a little game, a treasure hunt of sorts, inspired by the manor's history. Clues are hidden throughout, and the prize, She paused, her smile enigmatic. Well, let us say it is a secret worth uncovering. The guests murmured with interest, though Poirot's eyes narrowed. A game, yes, but he sensed a deeper purpose. Before anyone could move, a blood-curdling scream shattered the air, echoing from the direction of the library. The group froze, glasses clinking as they were set down in haste. Hastings was on his feet first, followed by Poirot, who moved with surprising agility for a man of his stature. They found the library door ajar, its heavy oak frame creaking as Hastings pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old books and leather. A single lamp cast a pool of light across a mahogany desk, where the butler, Mr. Giles, lay slumped, his face ashen and his eyes wide with shock. In his rigid hand, he clutched a small, ornate puzzle box, its surface carved with interlocking ravens and keys. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and a glass of spilled wine lay shattered beside him. "Good Lord!" Hastings exclaimed, rushing to the body. "He's dead, Poirot." Poirot knelt beside Giles, his gloved fingers probing gently. "Poison, I think," he murmured, noting the faint, bitter almond scent on the butler's lips. "Ministered, perhaps, in the wine. But the box, Hastings, regard us. It is no ordinary trinket." "Huh!" The other guests crowded into the doorway, their faces a tableau of horror and suspicion. Lady Evelyn clutched her pearls, her composure fraying. "This is monstrous," she whispered. Victor's fists clenched, while Clara let out a theatrical gasp, her hand fluttering to her chest. The colonel swore under his breath, and Dr. Langley dropped his notebook, stammering incoherently. Beatrice, however, remained composed, her knitting, needles still in hand, her eyes cold and assessing. "Mandrea," Poirot said, rising to his feet, his voice calm but commanding. "This is no accident, Kay. Monsieur Giles has been murdered, and this puzzle box, I suspect, holds the key to why. We must secure this room, and no one shall leave this manor until Hercule Poirot uncovers the truth." He turned to the group, his green eyes piercing. "It's a game, Mies Amos, has begun, but it is not the one you expected." The library became a hive of controlled chaos as Poirot took charge. He instructed Hastings to guard the door, ensuring no one tampered with the scene. The guests were ushered back to the parlor, their protests and questions ignored by Poirot's firm demeanor. Lady Evelyn, pale but regal, demanded to know how such a thing could happen under her roof. Victor muttered about calling the police, but Poirot waved a hand. "The local constabulary, they will come in time," he said. "First, Poirot must work. It's the truth. It is delicate, and it must not be trampled by clumsy boots." He returned to the library, his mind a whirlwind of observations. The puzzle box, no larger than a cigar case, was a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Its ebony surface inlaid with ivory and silver. The carvings formed a labyrinthine pattern, suggesting a mechanism that required both skill and knowledge to unlock. Poirot's fingers traced the edges, but he did not attempt to open it. "Not yet. Patience," he murmured to himself. "Box, it will speak when the time is right." He examined the room further. The library was vast, its shelves groaning under the weight of leather-bound tomes. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, its embers glowing faintly. The single window, its lidded panes rattling in the wind, overlooked the darkened grounds. The desk where Giles lay was cluttered with papers, quill pen, and an inkwell, but nothing seemed out of place, except for a single sheet of vellum, identical to the invitation Poirot had received, tucked beneath the book. A bore the same Ravennan key. Flourish, but no writing. A clue. A taunt. Poirot slipped it into his pocket, his mind racing. Hastings, hovering nearby, looked uneasy. "Poirot, This feels like a trap. Someone lured you here, and now a man's dead. What if you're the next target? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Hastings, your concern is touching, but Poirot is not so easily dispatched. The murderer, they have made a grave error. They have invited Hercule Poirot to their game, and I do not lose. He turned his attention to the guests, now gathered in the parlor under the watchful eye of the footman. Poirot began his questioning, his tone polite but relentless. Lady Evelyn claimed to have been in her private sitting room during the scream, preparing for the treasure hunt. Victor said he was in the billiards room, alone. Clara insisted she was in her guest room, refreshing her makeup, though her lipstick was suspiciously pristine. The Colonel had been in the conservatory, smoking a cigar, and Dr. Langley claimed to have been in the library earlier, researching, but left before dinner. Beatrice, knitting by the fire, said she hadn't moved all evening, a claim the footman corroborated. Yet Poirot sensed lies woven into their stories, the way Victor's eyes darted when asked about his whereabouts. The Colonel's overly precise recounting of his cigar's brand, Clara's hesitation when pressed about the timing, Langley's nervous fidgeting, and Beatrice's come to .com, perhaps, and Lady Evelyn. Her grief seemed genuine, but her hands betrayed a tremor that spoke of secrets. As the clock struck midnight, Poirot gathered the group once more. "Niece Amos," he said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Monsieur Giles was poisoned, likely within the hour before his death. But why? It is the likely culprit, but the puzzle boxa that is the heart of this mystery. It is no mere ornament. It is a challenge, a message from the killer. And I, Hercule Poirot, will decipher it." He held up the box, its carvings glinting in the firelight. This weekend, it was to be a game of intellect, but now it is a game of life and death. Rest well, for tomorrow, Poirot begins his hunt. Guests dispersed, their faces pale, their whispers trailing like shadows. Hastings lingered, his expression grim. "Poirot, this is only the beginning, isn't it?" "Oui, mon ami Poirot," replied, his eyes fixed on the puzzle box. "The little gray cells, they tell me this is but the first move in a game most dangerous, and I intend to win." The night deepened, and Ravenwood Manor seemed to pulse with secrets. In his room, Poirot sat by a flickering candle, the puzzle box before him. He did not touch it, but his mind worked tirelessly, piecing together the fragments of the evening, the letter, the scream, the box, the vellum. Somewhere in this labyrinth of motives and masks, the truth lay waiting. Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct, would find it. Chapter 2. The lockbox riddled the air in Ravenwood Manor, hung heavy with the scent of polished oak and candle wax. But beneath it lingered a sharper note, fear, acrid and unmistakable. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his small, precise hands clasped behind his back, his mustache impeccably trimmed. A beacon of calm amid the chaos that had erupted only hours before. The butler, Mr. Grayson, lay dead on the Persian rug, his face frozen in a grimace of surprise, a froth of poison still clinging to his lips. In his rigid hand, he clutched an ornate puzzle box, its ebony surface carved with swirling motifs that seemed to writhe in the flickering firelight. The guests, gathered in a tense semicircle, whispered among themselves, their eyes darting from the corpse to Poirot, who surveyed the scene with the quiet intensity of a chess master contemplating a critical move. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood at Poirot's side, his face pale but resolute. "Good heavens, Poirot," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the crackle of the hearth. "This is no ordinary murder. That box sits as if it's mocking us, mocking mon ami." Poirot's green eyes glinted with curiosity. "Nan, it is not mocking. It is speaking, and Hercule Poirot. He listens. He knelt beside the body, his movements deliberate, and gently pried the puzzle box from Grayson's grasp. The wood was cool to the touch, its weight suggesting hidden compartments or mechanisms within. The carvings, intricate as lace, formed a pattern that teased the mind a labyrinth of lines that promised answers if only one could find the key. The guests watched, their breaths held. Lady Evelyn Carver, the manor's aloof hostess, stood by the fireplace, her silver hair gleaming under the chandelier's glow. Her expression was unreadable, but her fingers tightened around the stem of her wineglass, betraying a flicker of unease. Beside her, her nephew Victor, a man of 30 with a brooding intensity, stared at the box as though it might bite. His dark eyes flicked to Poirot, then away, a gesture so swift it might have gone unnoticed by anyone less observant. The glamorous actress, Miss Clara Beaumont, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, her sobs a touch too theatrical for Poirot's taste. Colonel Reginald Thorne, retired and grizzled, stood ramrod straight, his military bearing at odds with the nervous twitch of his mustache. And Dr. Ernest Langley, the nervous scholar, clutched a worn notebook, his fingers trembling as he scribbled notes, as though the act of writing could ward off the horror before him. Poirot rose, holding the puzzle box aloft. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice soft yet commanding. "This box, it is the heart of our mystery. The poison that claimed poor Monsieur Grayson was swift, but this," he tapped the box gently, "this is deliberate. It is a challenge, a riddle left by the killer. Hercule Poirot. He does not refuse a challenge." Lady Evelyn stepped forward, her voice cool as frost. "Mr. Poirot, surely this is a matter for the police. A man is dead, and we are all shaken. This box is merely a trinket, a curiosity." "A trinket?" Poirot's eyebrows arched. "Nan, Lady Evelyn, a trinket does not inspire a man to cling to it in his final moments. This box, it holds a secret. And secrets, they are the currency of murder." Victor cleared his throat, his voice rough. "It's just an old heirloom. My uncle Lady Evelyn's late husband was fond of such things. Puzzles, codes, nonsense like that. Grayson probably found it in the library and was examining it." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And yet, Monsieur Victor, you look at this box as if it were a serpent. Tell me, what do you know of its origins?" Victor's jaw tightened, and for a moment, silence stretched taut. "Nothing," he said at last. It's unsettling, that's all." "Unsettling," Poirot repeated, his tone musing. "Oui, that is a word for it. But there is more, I think." He turned to the group. "We shall examine this box together, Nan, for in its secrets we may find the truth." The library, with its towering bookshelves and heavy velvet curtains, seemed to close in around them as Poirot set the box on a mahogany table. The carvings were mesmerizing spirals and knots that formed a pattern both chaotic and deliberate. Hastings leaned closer, squinting. "It's like one of those Chinese puzzle boxes, isn't it? You have to slide the pieces, just so." "Precisely," Poirot said, his fingers tracing the carvings. "But this is no mere toy. Observe the symbols here. A crescent moon. There, a star. A K. They are not random. A K, a language of their own." Clara Beaumont let out a dramatic gasp, her hand fluttering to her chest. "A code. Oh, Mr. Poirot, how thrilling, but how dreadful, too. To think the killer left such a thing for us to find." Poirot's smile was thin. "The killer, Mademoiselle Beaumont, did not leave this for us to find. They left it for me, and I shall not disappoint them." For the next hour, Poirot worked with a precision that bordered on artistry. He pressed, twisted, and slid the box's panels, his fingers moving with the grace of a pianist. The guests watched, some with fascination, others with barely concealed dread. At last, a soft click echoed in the silence, and a hidden drawer sprang open. Inside lay a single piece of parchment, folded neatly, its edges yellowed with age. Poirot unfolded it with care, revealing a single line written in elegant script. "The truth lies where shadows dance." A murmur rippled through the group. "Colonel," Thorne snorted. "Shadows dance? What sort of nonsense is that?" "It is not nonsense," Colonel Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "It is a clue. Shadows dance where light and darkness meet. We must find this place, and there we shall find the next piece of our puzzle." Hastings frowned. But where could that be? The manor's full of shadows, especially at night. Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where moonlight spilled across the lawn, casting long, wavering shadows. "The east wing," he said softly. "It is sealed, Nan. Forbidden, forgotten. A place where shadows linger." "We shall go there, Hastings. You and I," Lady Evelyn's voice cut through the air. "The east wing is unsafe, Mr. Poirot. The floors are rotted, the walls unstable. My husband sealed it years ago after an accident." "Accident," Poirot repeated, his tone neutral, but his eyes piercing. "And yet, the shadows, they call to us." "We shall take care, Lady Evelyn. But go, we must." The group dispersed, some to their rooms, others to whisper in corners. Poirot and Hastings waited until the manor grew quiet, the only sounds the creak of floorboards and the distant howl of the wind. Armed with a lantern, they made their way to the east wing, its heavy oak door barred with a rusted chain. Hastings broke the lock with a crowbar, and the door ground open, revealing a corridor cloaked in dust and cobwebs. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of mold and something sharper, something metallic. "By Jove, Poirot," Hastings whispered, "this place gives me the creeps. It's like stepping into a tomb." "A tomb, perhaps," Poirot said, "but one that holds secrets." He moved forward, his steps silent, his eyes scanning every detail. The lantern's light danced across faded wallpaper, revealing portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow them. At the end of the corridor, they found a locked room, its door adorned with the same crescent moon symbol as the puzzle box. Poirot knelt, examining the lock. "Simple mechanism," he murmured, producing a set of lockpicks from his pocket. With a few deft movements, the door clicked open, revealing a study frozen in time. Dust coated a massive desk, its surface cluttered with papers and a single, striking portrait. The man in the painting was tall, with piercing blue eyes and a sardonic smile. Lady Evelyn's late husband, Sir Alister Carver. Hastings shivered. "Those eyes, Poirot, it is as if he's watching us." "Perhaps he is, mon ami," Poirot said, stepping closer to the portrait. "But it is not his eyes that interest me. It is this." He pointed to a small, carved crescent moon in the frame's corner, identical to the one on the puzzle box. "This portrait, it is no mere decoration. It is another piece of the puzzle." As Poirot reached to examine the frame, a creak echoed. Behind them, he spun, the lantern casting wild shadows across the room. A cloaked figure stood in the doorway, their face obscured by a hood. For a moment, no one moved. Then the figure turned and fled, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. After them, Hastings, Poirot cried, but the figure was swift, vanishing into the maze of the east wing. By the time they reached the main hall, the figure was gone. The only evidence of their presence, a faint scent of lavender lingering in the air. Hastings panted, his face flushed. "Who was that, Poirot?" "The killer, perhaps," Poirot said, his voice calm but his mind racing. "Or perhaps another player in this game. The scent of lavender. It is distinctive. We shall remember it." They returned to the study, where Poirot examined the portrait more closely. Behind it, he found a hidden panel, but it was empty, its contents long removed. Someone has been here before us, he said, his voice tinged with frustration. But they have left us something. Nan, the portrait, the crescent moon, they point to Sir Alistair. His shadow looms over this mystery. As they made their way back to the main house, the storm outside began to gather strength, thunder rumbling like a warning. Poirot's mind churned, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. The note, the portrait, the cloaked figure. There were threads in a tapestry. And he would unravel it, no matter how intricate the design. Back in the library, Poirot gathered the guests once more. Mies Amos, he said, holding up the parchment. The truth lies where shadows dance. We have found the place, the East Wing, where Sir Alistair's legacy lingers. But someone among us knows more than they admit. The cloaked figure. They flee, but they cannot hide from Hercule Poirot. Clara Beaumont's hand flew to her throat, her eyes wide. A cloaked figure. Oh, how terrifying. It must be the killer. Victor's face darkened, or someone playing a cruel trick. This manor is full of secrets, Mr. Poirot. You do well to watch your step. Poirot smiled, unruffled. I always watch my step, Monsieur Victor. And I see more than you think. As the guests retired, their faces etched with fear and suspicion, Poirot turned to Hastings. The game, it deepens, mon ami. The puzzle box has spoken, and the East Wing has answered. The cloaked figure, they are the key. Tomorrow, we shall find them, and the truth, it will begin to emerge. Hastings nodded, though his eyes were troubled. I hope you're right, Poirot. This place, starting to feel like a trap. A trap, perhaps, Poirot said, his voice soft but resolute. Poor Hercule, he is no one's prey. The storm raged on, its fury shaking the manor's ancient walls. In his room, Poirot sat at a small desk, the puzzle box before him, its carvings glowing faintly in the candlelight. He traced the crescent moon with his finger, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The note, the portrait, the lavender-scented figure, they were pieces of a larger whole. A riddle designed to test even his formidable intellect. But Poirot was undaunted. The shadows might dance, but he would find the truth they hid. And somewhere, in Ravenwood Manor, the killer watched their own plans unfolding in the darkness. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The rain lashed against the tall windows of Ravenwood Manor. A relentless drumbeat that seemed to echo the unease settling over its inhabitants. Hercule Poirot stood by the hearth in the grand drawing room, his small, precise hands clasped behind his back, his mustache impeccably trimmed despite the late hour. The firelight danced across his sharp features, illuminating the keen intelligence in his dark eyes as he surveyed the gathered guests. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood nearby, his brow furrowed with concern. The scream that had shattered the night's calm still lingered in their minds, as did the grim discovery of the butler, Mr. Grayson, lying dead in the library, his lifeless hand clutching an ornate puzzle box. The guests were a study in contrasts, their faces betraying a spectrum of emotions: fear, suspicion, and, in some cases, poorly concealed guilt. Lady Evelyn Carver, the manor's elegant hostess, sat rigidly in a high-backed chair, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her eyes fixed on the flickering flames. Her nephew, Victor Carver, paced near the window, his tall frame taut with agitation, his dark hair falling untidily over his forehead. Colonel Reginald Thorpe, a retired military man with a weathered face and a penchant for brandy, slouched in an armchair, his fingers drumming an impatient rhythm on the armrest. Miss Clara Vane, the glamorous actress whose beauty was only rivaled by her penchant for drama, dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, though Poirot noted the absence of genuine tears. Lastly, Dr. Ernest Whitby, nervous scholar with wire-rimmed spectacles, in a habit of clutching his notebook, sat hunched over, scribbling furiously, as if the act of writing could ward off the specter of death. "Mon ami," Poirot said softly to Hastings, his voice a calm anchor in the storm of tension. "The death of Monsieur Grayson is no accident. The poison, it was administered with precision, and the puzzle box set un mistar within a mistar. We must proceed with care, for the killer is among us." Hastings nodded, his earnest face reflecting both trust in Poirot's genius and unease at the situation. But who would want to kill the butler, Poirot? He seemed such a quiet, unassuming fellow. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Quiet, perhaps, but unassuming. "None, Hastings. A butler sees all, hears all. He is the silent witness. 2 secrets. And secrets, my friend, are the currency of murder." The room grew quieter as Poirot stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking softly on the polished oak floor. "Madame et messieurs," he began, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to unraveling the tangled threads of human deceit. "The death of Monsieur Grayson demands our attention. I have examined the puzzle box, and it is locked, its secrets sealed within. But I assure you, the truth will not remain hidden. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover it." Lady Evelyn's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Mr. Poirot, this is a tragedy, but surely it was an isolated act. A robbery gone wrong, perhaps. Grayson might have surprised an intruder." Poirot inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "A possibility, Lady Evelyn, but unlikely. The poison cyanide, I suspect, from the faint almond-like scent, was no crude weapon. It required knowledge and opportunity. In the puzzle box, it is no mere trinket. It is a key, nest CEP, a key to something far greater." Victor stopped pacing, his hands clenching into fists. "This is absurd. You're turning a tragedy into some sort of parlor game. Grayson was old, probably sick. Maybe he took the poison himself." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Suicide, Monsieur Victor. Non. The man who clutches a puzzle box in his final moments does not seek death, but seeks to protect a secret. And I intend to discover what that secret is before anyone could respond." A gust of wind rattled the windows, and the lights flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Miss Vane let out a theatrical gasp, clutching Colonel Thorpe's arm. "Oh, it's too dreadful. This place is cursed, I tell you." "Enough of that nonsense," Colonel Thorpe growled, though his own face was pale. "This is a house, not a haunted castle. Let's not lose our heads." Dr. Whitby looked up from his notebook, his voice trembling. "Actually, Colonel Ravenwood Manor has a rather colorful history. I've been researching it for my book on English estates. There are stories, really, of secret societies that once met here in the East Wing." Poirot's head tilted, his interest piqued. "Secret societies, Monsieur Whitby. This is most intriguing. Pray, tell me more." Whitby hesitated, glancing nervously at Lady Evelyn, who remained impassive. "Well, it's mostly folklore. In the 19th century, the manor was owned by Sir Reginald Carver, Lady Evelyn's great-grandfather. He was said to be involved with a group called the Order of the Saffron Veil, a secretive society obsessed with codes and ciphers. They used the East Wing for their rituals, but it's been sealed off for decades." "Sealed off?" Hastings asked, his curiosity overriding his unease. "Why?" Lady Evelyn's voice cut through the room like a blade. "'Cause it's unsafe, Captain Hastings. The East Wing is crumbling, full of dust and memories best left undisturbed. My husband, Charles, forbade anyone from entering it before he disappeared." The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Poirot's gaze lingered on Lady Evelyn, noting the slight tremor in her hands, despite her composed demeanor. "Monsieur Charles Carver," he said slowly. Your husband. He vanished, you say? 10 years ago? Lady Evelyn met his gaze, her expression defiant. Yes, Mr. Poirot. A boating accident off the coast. His body was never found. It was a great tragedy for our family. Victor snorted, turning away from the window. Tragedy. He was a cat, Aunt Evelyn, and you know it. Always chasing women and gambling away the family fortune. Victor. Lady Evelyn snapped, her composure cracking. You will not speak of your uncle that way. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. Let us not be distracted by family disputes. The past, it casts long shadows, does it not? And I suspect those shadows hold the key to Monsieur Grayson's death. Tell me, Lady Evelyn, what was your husband's connection to puzzles, to codes? Lady Evelyn stiffened, her lips thinning. Charles was eccentric. He enjoyed puzzles. Yes, he designed several for amusement, but nothing more. Colonel Thorpe cleared his throat, his voice gruff. I knew Charles well, Poirot. Served with him in India before he inherited this pile of stones. He was mad about ciphers, always scribbling in that notebook of his. Said they were his way of keeping secrets safe. Bit of a fool, if you ask me. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A fool, Colonel. Oh, or a man with something to hide. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words settling over the group. Miss Vane broke the tension with a nervous laugh. Mr. Poirot, you do make everything sound so dramatic. Next, you'll say Charles is still alive, hiding in the East Wing like some Gothic villain. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The imagination, Mademoiselle Vane, is a powerful thing. I deal in facts, and the facts tell me that Monsieur Grayson's death is but the first act in a larger drama. I propose we retire for the night, but I urge you all to remain vigilant. The killer, he is clever, but he is not infallible. As the guests dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous halls, Hastings pulled Poirot aside. Do you really think the East Wing holds the answers, Poirot? Or is this all a wild goose chase? Poirot adjusted his tie, his expression serene. The East Wing, Hastings, is a place of secrets. And secrets, they did not like to remain buried. Come, let us take a little promenade before we sleep. The storm had worsened, the wind howling like a banshee as Poirot and Hastings made their way to the East Wing. The corridor leading to it was dim, the air thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. A heavy oak door, bolted and padlocked, barred their path. Poirot examined the lock, his fingers tracing its rusted edges. Curious, he murmured. This lock, it is old, but the scratches around it are fresh. Someone has been here recently, Hastings. Hastings shivered, glancing over his shoulder. This place gives me the creeps, Poirot. Do you think Whippy's stories about secret societies are true? Poirot's eyes gleamed in the dim light. Truth, Hastings, is often stranger than fiction. The Order of the Saffron Veil Sach, a name suggests mystery, intrigue. And if Monsieur Charles was involved, as the Colonel hints, then perhaps his disappearance was not as final as Lady Evelyn believes. They returned to the main house, the storm's fury making further exploration impossible. But Poirot's mind was alight, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. The butler's death, the puzzle box, the sealed East Wing. The whispers of scandal and secret societies hall were threads in a tapestry he was determined to unravel. The next morning, the manor was shrouded in mist, the storm having settled into a brooding drizzle. Kay gathered the guests for breakfast, but the mood was somber. Miss Vane, ever the performer, attempted to lighten the atmosphere with the tales of her latest theatrical triumph, but her efforts fell flat. Victor barely touched his food, his eyes darting to his aunt, who sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Colonel Thorpe grumbled about the coffee, while Dr. Whitby scribbled in his notebook, occasionally glancing up with a nervous twitch. Poirot, however, was in his element, his demeanor calm yet commanding. "Mes Amos," he said, sipping his tisane. "I have been reflecting on the puzzle box and its contents. The note, the truth lies where shadows dance. It is a clue, yes, but also a challenge. I propose we explore the East Wing together, under my supervision, to uncover what secrets it holds." Lady Evelyn's fork clattered against her plate. "Absolutely not, Mr. Poirot. The East Wing is dangerous, as I've said. I forbid it." Poirot's smile was polite, but unyielding. "With respect, Lady Evelyn, a man has been murdered in your home. The East Wing. It is no longer a private matter, but a matter of justice. I insist." Victor slammed his hand on the table. "This is madness. You're poking into things that don't concern you, Poirot. Let the police handle it when they arrive." "The police," Poirot said smoothly, "will not arrive until the storm subsides, perhaps tomorrow. Until then, I am the law, Nest C. P.A., and I say we go to the East Wing." Reluctantly, the group agreed, though their unease was palpable. Poirot led the way, small frame exuding authority as he unlocked the heavy door with a key provided by reluctant Lady Evelyn. The East Wing was a labyrinth of cobwebbed corridors and faded grandeur, its walls lined with portraits of stern-faced carvers. The air was heavy, oppressive. As if the very stones held their breath, they reached a large room, its windows boarded up, its only light coming from a single candelabra Poirot had brought. In the center stood a massive portrait of Charles Carver, his dark eyes seeming to follow their every move. Hastings shuddered. "Good Lord, Poirot, it's like he's watching us." Poirot approached the portrait, his fingers brushing the frame. "Indeed, Hastings, and perhaps he is. This portrait, it is not merely decorative. Serve the frame there's a seam, a hidden compartment perhaps." Before he could investigate further, a creak echoed through the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps fleeing down the corridor. Poirot spun around, his eyes narrowing. "Vite, Hastings, we have a visitor." They gave chase, but the figure, cloaked in shadow, vanished into the maze of the East Wing. When they returned, breathless, to the portrait, Poirot's expression was grim. "Someone does not wish us to uncover the truth, but they have made a mistake, Hastings. They have shown their hand." That afternoon, Poirot decided to set a trap. He announced to the guests that he had found a vital clue in the East Wing lie, but one designed to provoke a reaction. Placed a folded piece of paper, sealed with wax, in the portrait's frame, claiming it was a map to the killer's identity. "I shall retrieve it tonight," he declared, ensuring all heard. Until then, it remained safe. As evening fell, Poirot and Hastings hid in the East Wing, concealed behind a heavy curtain. The storm had resumed its fury, thunder rumbling like an ominous drum roll. At precisely 11 o'clock, a figure slipped into the room, their movements cautious but purposeful. Poirot held his breath as the figure approached the portrait, their hands reaching for the fake clue. "Now, Hastings," Poirot whispered, and they sprang forward, pulling back the curtain. The figure gasped, spinning around, and in the flickering candlelight, Poirot saw the pale, startled face of Miss Clara Vane. "Mon Dieu, Mademoiselle Vane," Poirot said, his voice laced with disappointment. "You surprised me? Why do you seek?" "My clue." Clara's eyes darted wildly, her composure crumbling. I wasn't going to steal it, Mr. Poirot. I swear. I just had to know what it was. Someone's been blackmailing me, threatening to ruin my career. They said the clue would expose me." Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. "Blackmail, mademoiselle. This is a serious matter, okay? Tell me everything." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she confessed. It started a month ago. Anonymous letters demanding money. They knew about an indiscretion from years ago. A scandal I thought was buried. I came to Ravenwood hoping to confront the blackmailer, but then Grayson died, and I thought maybe he was involved. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. And the clue, you believed it would reveal your tormentor?
Yes.
Clara whispered. I'm so frightened. Mr. Poirot, I didn't kill Grayson. I swear it. I believe you, mademoiselle, Poirot said, though his tone suggested he reserved judgment. But you must trust me now. Return to your room and speak of this to no one. As Clara fled, Hastings looked at Poirot, bewildered. Do you think she's telling the truth, Poirot, about the blackmail? Poirot stroked his mustache, his eyes distant. The truth, Hastings, is a slippery thing. Mademoiselle Vane is frightened, yes, but whether she is a victim or a player in this game, I am not yet certain. What I do know is that the East Wing holds more secrets, and the storm. It traps us all with the killer. As midnight approached, the manor seemed to hold its breath, the storm's roar a constant reminder of their isolation. Poirot sat in his room, a single candle illuminating the notes he had scribbled, names, motives, connections. The puzzle, box, the note, the East Wing, the black millet, all pointed to a web of deceit, spun long before Grayson's death. Charles Carver's disappearance, the Order of the Saffron Veil, Taskiel, East Wing, which was a piece of the puzzle. And Poirot was determined to fit them together. He turned to Hastings, who was nursing a glass of brandy. Tomorrow, Monde, Emmy, we shall return to the East Wing, the portrait of Monsieur Charles. It holds the next clue, I am certain. And we must be prepared, for the killer grows bold. Hastings nodded, though his expression was grim. I don't like it, Poirot. This place, these people, it's like we're trapped in one of those Gothic novels Clara's always going on about. Poirot chuckled softly. Perhaps, Hastings. But in a novel, the hero always triumphs, does he not? And I, Hercule Poirot, am no ordinary hero. As the candle flickered, casting long shadows across the room, Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, weaving the threads of the mystery into a tapestry that would soon reveal the truth. The shadows of the past were closing in, and Poirot was ready to meet them head-on. Chapter 4. The cipher in the chandelier. The storm raged outside Ravenwood Manor, its relentless howl clawing at the ancient stone walls as if desperate to unearth the secrets buried within. Inside, the grand dining hall was a sanctuary of opulence, its high ceilings adorned with gilded cornices and a massive crystal chandelier that hung like a frozen cascade of light. The flickering candles within it cast long, wavering shadows across the polished mahogany table, where the guests sat in uneasy silence, their faces taut with suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small, fastidious frame radiating an unshakable calm that seemed to anchor the room. His sharp, green eyes gleamed under the chandelier's glow, and his meticulously groomed mustache twitched as he surveyed the assembled company. Lady Evelyn Carver, her lips pressed into a thin line of defiance. Victor, her brooding nephew, whose fingers drummed nervously on the table. Colonel Reginald Hawthorne, his weathered face betraying a flicker of unease. Miss Clara Beaumont, the glamorous actress, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. And Dr. Ernest Whitby, the nervous scholar, clutching a glass of wine as if it were a lifeline. Mies Amos, Poirot began, his voice smooth and deliberate, cutting through the oppressive silence. The events of this night have revealed a truth most troubling. The death of Monsieur Grayson, the butler, was no accident, no mere misfortune. It was murder, calculated, precise, and executed with a cunning that seeks to elude even the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. But fear not, it's the truth. It is like the light of this chandelier. It dances, it flickers, but it cannot hide forever. Lady Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her voice icy. Sir Poirot, your flair for drama is noted, but surely you don't suspect one of us. Grayson was a servant, nothing more. Perhaps he crossed someone outside this house. Thief, a vagrant. Poirot tilted his head, a faint smile playing at his lips. A vagrant, you say, madame? One who poisons with such precision, leaving no trace but a puzzle box clutched in the victim's hand. Nan, the answer lies within these walls, among those who dine beneath this very chandelier. He gestured upward, the crystals catching the candlelight and scattering it in 1,000 prismatic shards. And it is to the chandelier we must turn. For the note we found in the puzzle box spoke of where shadows dance. Where else do shadows dance so vividly as here? The guests exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes darting to the chandelier. Hastings, standing faithfully at Poirot's side, leaned in and whispered, Poirot, are you suggesting the chandelier itself holds a clue? It's a bit theatrical, don't you think? Poirot's smile widened, though his eyes remained fixed on the group. Theatrical, mon ami, perhaps. But the criminal mind, it loves the dramatic. It craves the flourish, the gesture grand, and so we shall indulge it. A nimble step, Poirot approached the chandelier, its crystals tinkling softly as a draught stirred the air. The guests watched, transfixed, as he circled the table, his gaze locked on the glittering fixture. This chandelier, he mused aloud, it is not merely a decoration. It is a sentinel guarding the secrets of Ravenwood Manor, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall make it speak. He beckoned to Hastings, who, with a mix of skepticism and curiosity, fetched a stepladder from the corner of the room. The servants, hovering nervously at the edges, hesitated but complied when Poirot requested their assistance. Under his precise instructions, they lowered the chandelier slightly, its chains creaking as it descended. Poirot climbed the ladder, with surprising agility for a man of his stature, his hands steady as he examined the intricate framework. The guests held their breath, the only sound the distant rumble of thunder and the faint clink of crystals. There, Poirot exclaimed, his voice sharp with triumph. He reached into the heart of the chandelier, where a cluster of crystals formed a star-like pattern. His fingers probed delicately, and with a soft click, a small panel slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. From within, he extracted a leather-bound ledger, its edges worn, but its pages intact. The room erupted in gasps, and Victor leapt to his feet, his face pale. "What is that?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "How did you know?" "It was there." Poirot descended the ladder, holding the ledger aloft like a trophy. "The shadows, Monsieur Victor, they dance where the light is brightest. And this chandelier, it is the brightest point in Ravenwood. The note in the puzzle box was no riddle, it was a direction, and now we have found its treasure." He opened the ledger, its pages filled with neat rows of numbers and cryptic abbreviations. Poirot's eyes scanned the entries, his brow furrowing as he deciphered their meaning. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "this is no mere account book. It is a record of transactions most illicit, smuggling, perhaps, or worse, dates, amounts, and initials, all pointing to a network that stretches far beyond this manor." Colonel Hawthorne's face darkened, his hands clenching into fists. "Smuggling? Preposterous. I have served my country honorably, Poirot. I have no part in such nonsense." Poirot raised an eyebrow, his tone gentle but probing. "Honor, Colonel, is a fine thing, but even the most honorable men have secrets. Your military career, it took you too many ports, Nan, places where goods legal or otherwise might change hands." The Colonel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Clara Beaumont, her voice quivering with rehearsed emotion, interjected, This is absurd. You're accusing us all based on some dusty old book. Grayson probably hid it there himself. Poirot turned to her, his gaze piercing. Mademoiselle Beaumont, your concern for the truth is touching, but your tears, they are, perhaps, too perfect. The ledger, it was hidden with care by someone who knew this manor well. Someone who dines with us tonight. The tension in the room was palpable, the storm outside mirroring the growing unease within. Lady Evelyn rose, her posture regal, but her eyes cold. Enough of this, Monsieur Poirot. Overstep. This is my home, and I will not have my guests harassed by your theatrics. Poirot bowed slightly, undeterred. Madame, I seek only the truth. And the truth, it is like the storm, it cannot be silenced. Its ledger, it tells a story of wealth gained in shadows. But to understand its full meaning, I must consult my little gray cells further. As Poirot spoke, a heated exchange erupted across the table. Victor, his face flushed, turned to Lady Evelyn. Aunt Evelyn, this is madness. Your father was involved in something you must have known. Why won't you tell Poirot what you know about him? Lady Evelyn's composure faltered, her voice sharp. Victor, hold your tongue. You know nothing of your father's affairs. He was a good man. Whatever rumors, say rumors, Victor shot back, his voice rising. He vanished. Aunt Evelyn left us with nothing but whispers of scandal. Now this ledger, does it prove what they said about him? The room fell silent, all eyes on Lady Evelyn. She drew herself up, her expression unreadable. Your father made mistakes, Victor, but he loved his family. I will not have his memory dragged through the mud by a detective's wild theories. Poirot watched the exchange with keen interest, his mind cataloging every gesture, every inflection. Monsieur Victor, Madame Carver, your passion is noted, but let us not lose sight of the present. The ledger, it is a clue, but it is not the only one. There is another matter. The attack on Dr. Whitby, the scholar, who had been silent, started at the mention of his name. His hands trembled as he adjusted his spectacles. I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I saw nothing clearly. I was in the library, studying the manor's history, when I heard a noise. Then, pain and darkness. Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. We, doctor, and when we found you, you clutched a torn page from an old book. A page, perhaps, that holds another piece of this puzzle. But before we pursue it, we must address the events of this very night. As if on cue, a deafening crack of thunder shook the manor, followed by a gunshot that shattered the tense silence. The guests screamed, chairs scraping as they leaped to their feet. Hastings drew his revolver, his eyes scanning the room. Poirot, where did that come from? Poirot's.com never wavered. Quickly, Mise Amos, to the library. The group rushed down the dimly lit corridor, the storm's fury amplifying their fear. In the library, they found Dr. Whitby slumped over a table, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. Torn page from an old book lay clutched in his hand, its edges crumpled. A pistol lay on the floor nearby, its barrel still warm. Mon Dieu, Poirot exclaimed, kneeling beside the scholar. He lives, but he is gravely wounded. Hastings, fetch the maid for bandages. We must act swiftly. Hastings ran to summon help. Poirot examined the scene. The pistol was a Webley revolver, standard issue for military officers, a detail that did not escape his notice. The torn page, yellowed and fragile, bore a sketch of the manor's grounds, with an X marked near the old greenhouse. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he studied it, his mind racing. Lady Evelyn, her voice trembling with rare vulnerability, whispered, "Who was doing this, Monsieur Poirot?" "Why?" Poirot rose, his expression grave. "Madame, someone in this house is desperate to protect a secret tied to the ledger, the puzzle box, and now this page. The killer strikes to silence those who come too close to the truth, but they underestimate Hercule Poirot. As the maid arrived with bandages, Poirot directed the guests to return to the dining hall, save for Hastings, who remained at his side. The storm continued to rage, its lightning illuminating the library in stark flashes. Poirot knelt again, examining the torn page more closely. "This X," he murmured. "It is no mere mark. It is a destination. The greenhouse, Hastings, it holds the next piece of this puzzle." "But Poirot," Hastings protested, "it's pouring outside." "Surely you don't mean to go out there now?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. "Storm, mon ami. It is our ally. It keeps the killer within these walls, and it will not deter Hercule Poirot. Come, we must move quickly." Leaving Dr. Whitby in the care of the maid, Poirot and Hastings donned coats and ventured into the storm. The wind tore at their clothes, and the rain stung their faces as they made their way to the greenhouse, its glass panes glinting faintly in the lightning. The structure was old, its iron frame rusted, but the door creaked open easily under Poirot's touch. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying plants. Poirot's flashlight swept across the rows of wilted flowers, landing on a patch of disturbed soil near the back. "Here, Hastings," he said, kneeling. "The X marks this spot." Together, they dug, their hands caked with mud, until they uncovered a trapdoor hidden beneath the soil. With effort, they pried it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase descending into the earth. Poirot's expression was one of grim satisfaction. The manor keeps its secrets well, but not well enough. They descended, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. At the bottom, they found a small chamber, its walls lined with crates. Poirot opened one, revealing a cache of glittering jewels, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds, their facets catching the flashlight's beam. Among them was a sealed letter, its wax stamp bearing the initials J.C. J.C. Poirot. Mused, breaking the seal. John Carver, perhaps. The late husband of Lady Evelyn, whose shadow looms over this mystery. The letter, written in a hurried scrawl, read, "If you find this, know that I am betrayed. The ring is mine, but its profits are hers. She controls all, and I am but a pawn. Seek the truth in the East Wing." Hastings gasped. "John Carver. But he's dead. Poirot. Or is he?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Dead, or merely hidden. Mon ami, this letter suggests a man who feared for his life, man who knew too much, and the she he speaks of. It points to Lady Evelyn, or perhaps another." Their discovery was interrupted by a shout from above. Victor's voice, frantic, echoed through the greenhouse. "Monsieur Poirot, come quickly. It's the Colonel." Poirot and Hastings scrambled back to the surface, the jewels and letter secured in Poirot's coat. They found Victor in the dining hall, kneeling beside Colonel Hawthorne, who lay unconscious. On the floor, a knife embedded in the rug beside him. Blood trickled from a shallow wound on his temple. "He was like this when I came in," Victor cried, his hands shaking. "I swear I didn't touch him." Poirot examined the scene, his fingers brushing the knife's handle. "Curious," he murmured. "The wound, it is superficial, yet the knife is placed so dramatically. A warning, perhaps, or a distraction," as the guests gathered. There, faces a mix of shock and fear, Poirot stood, his voice commanding. "Mise Amos, the net tightens. The ledger, the jewels, the letterall point to a conspiracy that has festered in Ravenwood for years. But the killer, they grow careless. This attack on the Colonel, it is a desperate act, and it will be their undoing." He turned to Victor, his gaze piercing. "Sir Victor, you were quick to find the Colonel. Tell me, what brought you here so swiftly?" Victor paled, his words stumbling. I couldn't sleep. I came to get a drink, and I found him. Like this. I swear, I had nothing to do with it." Poirot nodded. but his eyes betrayed his skepticism. "We shall see, monsieur. For now, we must ensure the colonel's safety and protect the evidence we have found. The truth, it is close, but it is not yet ours." As the storm raged on, Poirot and Hastings returned to the library. The letter and ledgers spread before them. The torn page, the jewels, and the cryptic message all pointed to a deeper truth Poirot was determined to uncover. The shadows danced, but Hercule Poirot would bring them into the light. Chapter 5. The Torn Page's Secret. The storm outside Ravenwood Manor raged with unrelenting fury, its howling winds rattling the ancient windows and casting jagged shadows across the dimly lit library. Rain lashed against the panes, a relentless drumbeat that seemed to echo the mounting tension within the manor's walls. Hercule Poirot stood near the fireplace, his small, fastidious figure silhouetted against the flickering flames. His mustache twitched slightly as he examined the torn page clutched in his gloved hand, a fragile, yellowed fragment marked with cryptic lines and a bold, inked X. The page, ripped from an old book found beside the wounded scholar, Mr. Theodore Grayson, was no mere scrap of paper. Poirot. It was a beacon, a tantalizing clue in a case that grew more labyrinthine with each passing hour. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, hovered nearby, his brow furrowed with concern. "I say, Poirot," he ventured, his voice barely rising above the storm's clamor. "This rapport, whatever it is, looks dashed peculiar. That X could mean anything. Buried treasure, perhaps. Or a secret room." Poirot's green eyes glinted with amusement, though his expression remained grave. "Monsieur Hastings, you are, as always, enamored with the romantic treasure. Indeed, non, this X marks something far more dangerous, a truth someone in this house is desperate to conceal. The little gray cells, they tell me this page is the key to unlocking the murderer's motive." The library, with its towering shelves and musty tomes, seemed to close in around them. The other guests had retired to their rooms, or so they claimed, after the chaos of Grayson's attack. The scholar, now resting under the care of the manor's elderly housekeeper, Mrs. Dobbs, had been found slumped in the corridor, blood seeping from a shallow wound to his temple, the torn page clutched in his trembling hand. His mumbled words, the key to the truth, had sent Poirot's mind into overdrive. The butler's murder, the puzzle box, the shadowy figure in the east wing. And now this attack formed a constellation of clues, each pointing to a deeper conspiracy. Poirot smoothed the page on the library table, its edges frayed and ink faded. The map depicted the manor's sprawling grounds, the rose garden, cold, the frozen fountain, the winding path to the old greenhouse. Set squarely near the greenhouse, a structure long abandoned, its glass panes cracked and overgrown with ivy. "The greenhouse, Hastings," Poirot murmured, tapping the X with a manicured finger. "It is there we must go, despite this tempest. The truth, it does not wait for fair weather." Hastings blanched, glancing at the rain-streaked windows. "In this storm? Surely it can wait until morning. The killer's not likely to be out there in this deluge." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "The killer, Hastings, is precisely why we must go now. They believe the storm will shield them, but Hercule Poirot is not so easily deterred by a little rain." He adjusted his overcoat, retrieved his umbrella, and motioned for Hastings to follow. "Come, mon ami. The night is young, and the secrets are many." The journey to the greenhouse was a battle against the elements. The wind tore at their coats, and the rain soaked through their shoes as they navigated the muddy path. The manor loomed behind them, its Gothic silhouette barely visible through the downpour. Hastings clutched a lantern, its feeble light swaying, with each gust illuminating the gnarled trees and sodden earth. "This is madness, Poirot," he shouted over the storm. We'll catch our death out here. Death, Hastings, is already among us, Poirot replied, his voice steady despite the chaos. The butler, he is dead. Monsieur Grayson, he is wounded. We must act before the killer strikes again. The greenhouse emerged from the darkness, a skeletal structure of rusted iron and shattered glass. Ivy clung to its frame like a living shroud, and the door hung ajar, creaking in the wind. Poirot paused, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. "Serve, Hastings," he said, pointing to the ground. Footprints, fresh in the mud, leading inside. Someone has been here, and recently. Hastings squinted, barely discerning the faint impressions in the dim light. Could be the gardeners, couldn't it? Or one of the staff. Poirot shook his head. Nan, these are too deliberate, too careful. The gardener, he tramples with abandon. These prints, they belong to someone who wishes not to be seen. He pushed open the door, its hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The air within the greenhouse was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Broken pots littered the floor, and vines snaked across the cracked glass, casting eerie patterns in the lantern's glow. Poirot moved with purpose, his eyes darting from corner to corner. It is here, he said, kneeling beside a cluster of overturned planters. He brushed away the dirt, revealing a trapdoor, its edges concealed by years of neglect. A rusted padlock secured it, but the lock was new, its shine betraying recent use. Good heavens, Poirot, Hastings exclaimed. A secret passage. This place is like something out of a Gothic novel. Poirot's fingers traced the lock's contours. A novel, perhaps, but one written in blood. We must open this trapdoor, Hastings. The key, I suspect, is closer than we think. He stood, his mind racing. Scala's words, the key to the truth, echoed in his thoughts. Could Grayson have meant a literal key, or was it another of the manor's endless riddles? Before they could search further, a sharp crack split the air branch, snapping underfoot, just outside. Poirot's hand shot up, silencing Hastings. The lantern's light flickered as they crouched behind a rotting bench. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate, pausing at the greenhouse door. A shadow loomed, indistinct but unmistakably human. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his hand slipping into his pocket, where he kept a small but reassuring pistol of precaution he rarely admitted to carrying. The figure hesitated, then retreated, the footsteps fading into the storm. Poirot exhaled, his composure unshaken. They know we are here, he whispered, but they do not know how close we are to their secret. Come, Hastings, we must work quickly. Using a hairpin from his paquita, trick learned from years of improvisation, Poirot deftly picked the lock, the mechanism yielding with a satisfying click. The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a narrow stone staircase descending into darkness. As Hastings peered over the edge, his face pale. You're not seriously suggesting we go down there, are you? Poirot's smile was almost mischievous. Oui, mon ami. The truth, it lies below. And Hercule Poirot does not turn back from the truth. The staircase spiraled into a damp, cavernous chamber, its walls slick with moss, and its air heavy with the temps of mildew. The lantern cast long shadows, revealing crates stacked against the walls, their surfaces marked with cryptic symbols. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he examined one, prying open its lid with a rusted crowbar left nearby. Inside, nestled in velvet, were jewels, emeralds, sapphires, and diamonds that sparkled even in the dim light. Hastings gasped. Good Lord. Poirot, smuggled goods, right under the manor. Precisement, Poirot said, his voice low. This is no mere burglary, Hastings. This is a syndicate, a network of crime woven into the very fabric of Ravenwood Manor. He sifted through the crate, uncovering a folded letter, its wax seal broken, but bearing the crest of the Carver family. The letter, written in a hurried scrawl, read, "The shipment is secure. The guardian watches, but the key remains hidden. Trust no one, not even her." Poirot's brow furrowed. "The guardian," he murmured. "And her, could this be Lady Evelyn, or another?" He tucked the letter into his coat, his mind already piecing together the puzzle. The smuggling ring, the butler's murder, the scholar's attack hall were connected. Threads in a tapestry of deceit. Their discovery was interrupted by a faint sound, a muffled cry from above. Hastings spun, nearly dropping the lantern. What was that? Another attack? Poirot's expression hardened. "We must return, Vite." He ascended the stairs, emerging into the greenhouse just as another scream pierced the night, this one unmistakable. It came from the manor, sharp and desperate. Poirot broke into a run, his small frame surprisingly agile, with Hastings stumbling behind. Back at the manor, chaos reigned. The guests had gathered in the grand hall, their faces pale and drawn. Lady Evelyn stood at the center, her composure frayed, her hands wringing a lace handkerchief. Victor, her nephew, paced furiously, his dark eyes blazing. The actress, Miss Clara Beaumont, clung to the arm of the retired colonel, Sir Reginald Thorpe, who looked shaken but resolute. Mrs. Dobbs, the housekeeper, hovered near the door, her eyes darting nervously. "What has happened?" Poirot demanded, his voice cutting through the din. "It's Sir Reginald," Clara cried, her voice trembling with theatrical flair. "He was attacked in the corridor near the east wing. A knife left beside him, as if to taunt us." Poirot's gaze snapped to the colonel, who leaned heavily against a chair, a bruise blooming on his forehead. "I'm fine," Sir Reginald growled, waving off Clara's concern. "Caught me off guard, that's all. Didn't see the blighter's face." Poirot knelt beside the discarded knife, its blade gleaming in the chandelier's light. "A curio," he murmured. "The knife, it is placed too perfectly, as if staged for our benefit. A warning, perhaps, or a distraction." He rose, his eyes sweeping the room. "Where is Monsieur Grayson?" "He's resting," Mrs. Dobbs said quickly. "Poor man's still weak from his ordeal." "I must see him," Poirot insisted. "And I must know where each of you was when this attack occurred." "No one leaves this room until I return." Grayson's room. The scholar lay propped against pillows, his face pale but alert. The bandage on his temple was fresh, and his eyes widened at Poirot's entrance. "Monsieur Poirot," he rasped, "I tried to tell you the kid's not just a metaphor, it's real. I saw it in the library before I was struck." Poirot leaned closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Describe this key, monsieur." "It was small, brass, with a clover-shaped head," Grayson said, his words halting. "I found it in a book, a hollowed-out volume of Dante's Inferno. I think it unlocks something in the greenhouse." Poirot's mind raced. The greenhouse, the trapdoor, the jewels. The pieces were aligning, but the picture remained incomplete. "You have done well, monsieur," he said, patting Grayson's hand. "Rest now. Hercule Poirot will ensure no further harm comes to you." As he left the room, Poirot's thoughts turned to Victor. The young man's connection to the smuggling ring, through his father's letter, was undeniable. Yet his demeanor suggested fear as much as guilt. Poirot resolved to confront him, but first he needed to verify the alibis of the others. The killer was growing bolder, and the storm, far from being a hindrance, was their ally, trapping everyone within the manor's walls. The grand hall was a tableau of suspicion when Poirot returned. Lady Evelyn's icy stare met his, her lips pressed into a thin line. Victor avoided his gaze, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Clara dabbed at her eyes, her performance convincing to all but Poirot, who noted the lack of actual tears. Sir Reginald sat stiffly, his military bearing intact despite the bruise. Mrs. Dobbs lingered at the edges, her nervous fidgeting betraying more than she intended. Mesdames, et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice commanding attention. We are in the midst of a game of death. The butler, he was poisoned. Monsieur Grayson, he was struck. And now, Sir Reginald, attacked with a knife. But these are not random acts. They are moves in a carefully planned strategy. And Hercule Poirot, he does not lose at such games. Keyed, his hands clasped behind his back. Torn page. It led us to the greenhouse, where we found evidence of a smuggling operation. Jewels hidden beneath the earth, guarded by someone who calls themselves the Guardian. But who is this Guardian? And why do they strike now? Victor stepped forward, his voice sharp. You're accusing me, aren't you? 'Cause of my father's letter. I knew he was mixed up in something, but I'm no murderer. Poirot raised a hand. Calm yourself, Monsieur Victor. I accuse no one yet, but you must tell me what you know of your father's dealings. The truth, it is your only defense. Victor hesitated, then sighed. He was involved in something illegal years ago. Smuggling, I think. He disappeared when I was a boy, and Aunt Evelyn said he was dead. But I found letters in his study, hinting he might still be alive. I came here to find out the truth. Lady Evelyn's face paled, but she said nothing. Poirot noted her silence, filing it away for later. And you, Madame Carver, he said, turning to her. What do you know of these letters? I know nothing, she snapped, her voice like ice. My husband is dead. Victor's chasing ghosts. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Ghosts, madame, perhaps. But ghosts do not wield knives or poison butlers. Someone living does. He turned to the group. Tomorrow, we will search the library for this key Monsieur Grayson described. Until then, lock your doors. The killer is among us, and they are watching. As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered in the hall, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The storm outside showed no sign of abating, mirroring the turmoil within Ravenwood Manor. The jewels, the letter, the key. The attack all pointed to a conspiracy rooted in the manor's past. Lady Evelyn's husband, the smuggling ring, the Guardian, each was a piece of the puzzle, but the final picture eluded him. Hastings joined him, his face weary. I don't like this, Poirot. It feels like we're walking into a trap. Perhaps, mon ami, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. But a trap, it works both ways. The killer sets it for us, but Hercule Poirot, he turns it against them. Tomorrow we find the key, and with it, the truth. The night stretched on, the storm a relentless reminder of the danger lurking within Ravenwood Manor. Poirot retired to his room, but sleep eluded him. His little gray cells worked tirelessly, weaving the threads of the mystery into a pattern only he could see. The torn page's secret was but one step toward unraveling the truth, and Poirot was determined to take it, no matter the cost. Chapter 6. The alibi unravels. The storm that had besieged Ravenwood Manor for 2 days showed no sign of abating. Rain lashed against the tall, arched windows of the dining hall, each gust rattling the panes as if the elements themselves were conspiring to keep the secrets of the house locked within its ancient walls. The air inside was heavy with suspicion, the flickering light of the grand chandelier casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to writhe like specters across the polished oak table. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit, despite the hour, stood at the head of the room, his small, precise hands clasped behind his back. His mustache twitched slightly, a telltale sign that his little gray cells were in furious motion. Captain Hastings, seated to his left, shifted uncomfortably, his broad shoulders tense. The events of the past 2 days, the butler's poisoning, Scala's attack, the colonel's mysterious collapse, had left him rattled. Though he tried to maintain his usual air of stalwart optimism. Around the table sat the remaining guests, their faces a tableau of unease. Lady Evelyn Carver, her aristocratic poise strained but intact. Victor Carver, her brooding nephew, whose dark eyes darted nervously. The glamorous actress, Miss Clara Vane, her painted lips pursed in defiance. The scholar, Dr. Percival Wren, pale but upright, his bandaged arm a stark reminder of his recent brush with death, and Colonel Reginald Thorne, newly recovered, his weathered face set in a scowl. Poirot's gaze swept over them, sharp and unyielding, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. "Miss Amos," he began, his voice calm yet commanding, "we find ourselves in a most delicate situation. A man is dead, another wounded, and yet another struck down. The threads of this mystery are tangled, but Hercule Poirot does not despair. Nan, he observes, he listens, and he unravels. Today we shall examine the alibis of each of you for the night of the butler's murder and the subsequent attacks. The truth, it hides, but it cannot hide forever." A murmur rippled through the group. Lady Evelyn adjusted her pearl necklace, her fingers lingering a moment too long. Victor's jaw tightened, and Clara Vane let out a theatrical sigh, tossing her auburn curls. Colonel Thorne crossed his arms, his military bearing unyielding, while Dr. Wren scribbled nervously in a small notebook, his pens scratching like a trapped insect. Poirot raised a hand for silence. "We begin with the night of the butler's murder. Sir Hastings, if you please, recount your movements." Hastings straightened, clearing his throat. "Right. Well, I was with you, Poirot, in the drawing room after dinner. We were discussing the peculiar invitation that brought us here. Round 9 o'clock, I retired to my room to fetch my pipe, and I heard the scream shortly after. I rushed to the library and found you already there, with the butler, dead. Precisement." Poirot nodded. "And I, Hercule Poirot, was in the drawing room until the scream drew me to the library, where I found poor Monsieur Grayson, the butler, clutching the puzzle box. Now, Lady Evelyn, where were you at this time?" Lady Evelyn's eyes, pale and piercing, met Poirot's without flinching. "I was in my private sitting room, reviewing correspondence. I heard the scream and came at once to the library, where I found you and Captain Hastings." Poirot's head tilted slightly, his eyes narrowing. "And yet, madame, I have a witness who places you elsewhere. The maid, Mademoiselle Jenny, saw you near the library door shortly before the scream." Gasp escaped Clara Vane, quickly stifled. Lady Evelyn's composure faltered, her lips parting in surprise. "That is absurd," she said sharply. "Jenny must be mistaken. Was nowhere near the library until after the scream." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone mild but his eyes gleaming. "We shall return to this. Monsieur Victor, your account, s'il vous plaît." Victor leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "I was in the billiard room, playing a solitary game. Clara Miss Vane was with me for a while, but she left before the scream. I heard it and ran to the library." Clara's head snapped up, her green eyes flashing. "That's not quite right, Victor. I was with you, yes, but we were together. When the scream happened, you told me to stay in the billiard room while you went to check." Victor's face reddened, and he shot her a look that was equal parts anger and panic. "You're mistaken, Clara. I was alone." Poirot's mustache twitched again, and Hastings could almost hear the gears turning in his friend's mind. "Mademoiselle Vane," Poirot said, turning to the actress, "this is most curious. You confirm Monsieur Victor's presence with you, yet he denies it. Why, I wonder, would he wish to distance himself from you at such a critical moment?" Clara hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her silk scarf. "I don't know. Perhaps he's confused. It was a chaotic night." "Chaos, oui, But the mind of Hercule Poirot thrives in chaos, Poirot said, his voice taking on a rhythmic cadence. Let us move to the attack on Dr. Wren. Monsieur le Docteur, you were found in the study, clutching a torn page. Where were you before this? Dr. Wren adjusted his spectacles, his voice tremulous but clear. I was in my room, working on my research into the manor's history. I went to the study to fetch a book, and that's when I was attacked. I didn't see who it was, just a shadow, and then pain. And you, Colonel Thorne. Poirot's gaze shifted to the older man, whose scowl deepened. I was in the smoking room, having a brandy, the colonel growled. Heard nothing until the commotion about Wren. As for my incident, I was in my room when I was struck. Don't know who or how. Woke up with that blasted knife beside me. Poirot nodded slowly, pacing a small circle. So, we have alibis, but they are fragile, like a house of cards in a storm. Let us now consider the second puzzle box discovered this morning in the colonel's room. A collective intake of breath filled the room. Colonel Thorne's face darkened. Told you, Poirot, I've never seen that thing before. Someone planted it. Perhaps, Poirot said, producing a small, ornate box from his pocket. It was identical to the one found with the butler, its carved surface glinting in the chandelier's light. Okay, this box, it contains a key, Mies Amos, that I believe unlocks a safe in the east wing. I have examined this safe, and it is empty. Someone has been there before me. The room erupted in murmurs. Lady Evelyn's hand tightened on her necklace. Victor's eyes darted to Clara, and Dr. Wren scribbled furiously. Colonel Thorne slammed a fist on the table. This is preposterous. You're accusing me of something I didn't do. Nan, Colonel Poirot said, raising a hand. I accuse no one yet, but the facts, they speak. The butler was poisoned. Dr. Wren attacked. The colonel struck. And now, an empty safe. The threads, they converge, but the pattern is not yet clear. Hastings leaned toward Poirot, whispering, What's your game, old chap? You're stirring them up like a nest of hornets. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Precisement, mon ami. When the hornets are stirred, they reveal their stings. The interrogation continued for another hour, with Poirot probing each guest's story, exposing inconsistencies like a jeweler inspecting flaws in a diamond. Lady Evelyn's claim of being in her sitting room was undermined, not only by the maid's testimony, but by a faint smear of library dust on her shawl, noticed only by Poirot's eagle eye. Victor and Clara's conflicting alibis suggested a deeper connection, one they were both eager to conceal. The colonel's military background, with its ties to the smuggling ring uncovered in the chandelier's ledger, made his protests ring hollow. Dr. Wren, though frail, seemed to know more about the manor's secrets than he let on, his nervous scribbling betraying a mind racing to piece together its own puzzle. As the clock struck noon, Poirot called for a break, allowing the guests to disperse under the watchful eye of the manor's remaining staff. Hastings followed Poirot to the library, where the detective stood before the fireplace, staring into the dying embers. You've got them on edge, Poirot, Hastings said, lighting his pipe. But do you really think the killer's among them? Or is this mysterious figure from the east wing still out there? Poirot turned, his expression grave. Killa, mon ami, is most certainly among us. This figure in the east wing, the empty safe, the puzzle boxes, these are not separate mysteries, but parts of a single tapestry. The key, it unlocks more than a safe. It unlocks the truth. But the safe was empty, Hastings protested. Someone got there first. What were they after? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, Hastings, is the question. The safe was meant to hold something of great value, not money, but a secret. Skull, and someone in this house is desperate to keep it hidden. The afternoon brought a new discovery. Poirot, accompanied by Hastings and a reluctant Victor, ventured to the east wing to inspect the safe again. The heavy iron door, concealed behind a faded tapestry, stood ajar, its emptiness mocking their efforts. But Poirot's attention was drawn to the floor, where a faint scratch mark suggested something had been dragged away. Following the trail, they found a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Good heavens," Poirot, Hastings whispered, peering into the gloom. "This place is a labyrinth. And like the labyrinth of Crete, it hides a monster," Poirot replied, producing a small flashlight. "Come, we descend." The staircase led to a damp, stone-walled chamber, its air thick with the scent of mold. In the center stood a wooden crate, its lid pried open. Inside, Poirot found a collection of papers, letters, maps, and a single photograph of a man who bore a striking resemblance to Victor. The letters, written in a hurried script, detailed plans for a smuggling operation with references to the Guardian and a final reckoning. The photograph, however, was the most chilling. The man, identified as Edward Carver, Lady Evelyn's supposedly deceased husband, stared directly at the camera, his eyes cold and calculating. "By Jove," Hastings exclaimed. "He's alive, isn't he? Lady Evelyn's husband?" Poirot's face was unreadable. "Perhaps, mon ami. Oh, perhaps this is another piece of the puzzle, placed to mislead. We must return to the others. This discovery, it changes everything." Back in the dining hall, Poirot confronted the guests. With the photograph, Lady Evelyn's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she denied any knowledge of her husband's survival. Victor, however, reacted with fury, snatching the photograph and tearing it in half. "This is a lie," he shouted. "My father's dead. Someone's playing a cruel trick." Clara Vane, her eyes wide with fear, clutched Victor's arm. "Calm down, Victor. You're only making it worse." Poirot watched the exchange closely, his mind racing. The photograph, the letters, the empty safe all pointed to a conspiracy deeper than he had imagined. But the alibis, so carefully constructed, were beginning to crumble. Lady Evelyn's lie about her location, Victor and Clara's secret alliance, the Colonel's dubious past, Kay and Dr. Wren's cryptic knowledge all were threads in a web that Poirot was determined to untangle. As night fell, the storm grew fiercer, lightning illuminating the manor in stark flashes. Poirot retired to his room, but sleep eluded him. He sat at a small desk, sketching a diagram of the manor's layout, marking the locations of each crime and clue. Puzzle boxes, the chandelier's ledger, the greenhouse's jewels. The east wing's safe all were connected, but the final piece remained elusive. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Hastings, his face pale. "Poirot, you'd better come quickly. Clara's gone missing. There's a note in her room that says, 'I know too much.'" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The game, it accelerates. Come, Hastings. We must act before the killer strikes again." Chapter 7. The ghost in the mirror of the storm that had battered Ravenwood Manor for 2 days showed no signs of relenting. Rain lashed against the tall, arched windows, and the wind howled through the ancient eaves as if the manor itself were protesting the secrets it harbored. Inside, the air was thick with suspicion, the guests' nerves frayed by the mounting body count and the relentless probing of Hercule Poirot's little gray cells. The latest clue, a second puzzle box found in Colonel Ramsay's room, containing a key to an empty safe, had only deepened the mystery, leaving Poirot certain that the killer was growing desperate. The manor's shadowy east wing, sealed for a decade, beckoned like a siren, promising answers yet threatening danger. Poirot stood in the grand dining hall, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor as he paced beneath the chandelier. Its crystal prisms caught the flickering light of the candelabra, casting jagged shadows that danced across the walls, shadows that, as the cryptic note from the first puzzle box had hinted, might conceal the truth. Captain Hastings, ever loyal but increasingly anxious, hovered nearby, his brow furrowed as he clutched a cup of tea that had long gone cold. "Monsieur Poirot," Hastings began, his voice low, "this business about the East Wing, it's giving me the creeps. First the butler, then the scholar, and now the colonel. And that blasted safe being empty. Someone's always one step ahead of us." Poirot paused, his mustache twitching as he fixed Hastings with a piercing gaze. "Oui, mon ami, but it is precisely this desperation that will be their undoing. It's the empty safe. It tells us much. The killer believes they have outwitted Poirot, but they have only revealed their fear. We must now turn our attention to the East Wing, where the shadows dance and the past whispers its secrets." Hastings shivered, glancing at the darkened corridor that led to the forbidden wing. "And what about this talk of a ghost? The maid, Clara, swears she saw a figure in a hooded cloak gliding through the halls last night. Said it vanished into a mirror." Poirot's eyes gleamed with interest. "K ghost, you say?" "K, there are no ghosts, Hastings, only men and women who wish to hide their deeds. This mirror intrigues me. We shall investigate, but first we must gather our suspects. The truth, it is close, but it requires the right pressure to emerge." The guests were summoned to the drawing room, a cavernous space adorned with faded tapestries and a roaring fire that did little to dispel the chill. Lady Evelyn Carver, regal in her black silk gown, sat rigidly in an armchair, her pale hands folded tightly in her lap. Her nephew, Victor, slouched against the mantel, his dark eyes darting nervously. The actress, Miss Celeste Duval, draped herself dramatically across the chaise longue, her crimson lips pursed in a pout. The scholar, Mr. Edwin Poole, now recovered from his attack, but still pale, clutched a notebook as if it were a lifeline. Colonel Ramsay, his head bandaged from the recent assault, stood stiffly by the window, his military bearing undiminished despite his ordeal. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, each guest eyeing the others as if searching for the mark of a killer. Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small stature commanding attention. "Messieurs," he began, his voice smooth yet edged with authority. "The events of the past 2 days have revealed a tapestry of deceit. The butler, poisoned. The scholar, attacked. The colonel, struck down. And now an empty safe that once held secrets of great value. But there is another thread in this tapestry, one that whispers of the supernatural, a ghost, they say, in the East Wing. Tell me, who among you has seen this apparition?" "Key," a murmur rippled through the group. Clara, the young maid who had lingered at the edge of the room, stepped forward, her hands twisting in her apron. "Swear it, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "Last night I was tidying the East Wing corridor against orders, mind you, but I thought I heard something. There it was, a figure in a hooded cloak, moving silent as a shadow. It stopped before the big mirror, the one with the gilt frame. And then, poof, it was gone, like it stepped right through the glass." Miss Duval let out a theatrical gasp, pressing a hand to her chest. "A ghost. Oh, how perfectly dreadful." "Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't believe such nonsense." Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. "Mademoiselle Duval, I believe in what I can see, touch, and deduce. A ghost is but a story until it leaves evidence. This mirror, it interests me greatly. We shall examine it at once." Victor straightened, his voice sharp. "The East Wing's been locked for years. Why waste time chasing fairy tales when we should be finding the killer?" Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed, her tone icy. "Victor, mind your tongue. Monsieur Poirot is our guest, and his methods, however unconventional, have our trust." Poirot inclined his head, acknowledging her with a polite nod. "A key, Lady Evelyn, but your nephew is not entirely wrong. Time, it is of the essence. The East Wing holds the key to our mystery, and this mirror may be its lock. Come, Hastings, let us explore." So the group dispersed, their whispers trailing like smoke. Poirot and Hastings made their way to the East Wing. The corridor was dim, lit only by a single oil lamp that cast long, wavering shadows. The air was musty, heavy with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. At the end of the hall stood the mirror Clara had described, a towering piece. Its gilt frame intricately carved with vines and roses, its surface clouded with age. Poirot ran his fingers along the frame, his eyes narrowing as he studied the reflection of the corridor behind them. "Hastings," he murmured, "observe the mirror. It is not flush with the wall. There is a gap, ever so slight, at the edges. And see here." He pressed a carved rose, and a soft click echoed in the silence. The mirror shifted, revealing a narrow gap, just wide enough for a person to slip through. Hastings gaped. "Good heavens, Poirot, a secret passage." "Seismint," Poirot replied, his voice tinged with satisfaction. "The ghost, it seems. It's quite human. Let us see where this leads." They stepped through the gap, the mirror swinging shut. Behind them, Steve's was cramped, its stone walls damp and cold. Poirot lit a small pocket torch, its beam cutting through the darkness to reveal a spiral staircase descending into the bowels of the manor. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of earth and decay. As they descended, Hastings' footsteps faltered, his breathing uneven. "Steady, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice calm. "The truth, it lies below the bottom of the staircase." They emerged into a low-ceilinged chamber, its walls lined with shelves of dusty books and strange artifacts, glass vials, rusted tools, and a collection of small, locked boxes identical to the ones found earlier. In the center of the room stood a wooden table, its surface scarred and stained. On it lay a single object, a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. Poirot opened the journal, his fingers deft as he scanned the cramped handwriting. "Mon Dieu," he whispered. "This is the diary of Mr. Carver, Lady Evelyn's late husband, or so we were told. Listen, Hastings. The Order of the Raven Guards, the manor's secrets. The jewels are but a means to an end. The true treasure lies in the trust of those who serve. The Order of the Ravena's secret society, perhaps tied to the smuggling ring." Hastings frowned, peering over Poirot's shoulder. "But Carver's dead, isn't he? Vanished 10 years ago?" Unless, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming, "he is not dead at all. The groundskeeper, perhaps. A man who knows the manor's secrets, who moves unseen. We must speak with Lady Evelyn at once." Tina, they retraced their steps, emerging back into the corridor. But as they closed the mirror, a sharp cry echoed through the manor, sharp and desperate. Poirot and Hastings raced toward the sound, arriving in the drawing room to find chaos. Miss Duval was gone, her shawl abandoned on the chaise longue. On the floor lay a crumpled note, written in a hurried scrawl. "I know too much." Poirot's face darkened as he read the note aloud. "Mademoiselle Duval has been taken, or she wishes us to believe so. This note, it is too convenient, too theatrical. We must search the manor, Hastings, and quickly." The guests were roused, their protests ignored as Poirot organized a search. Lady Evelyn, her composure fraying, insisted she had been in her study. Victor claimed he was in the library, but his hands trembled as he spoke. The colonel, still weak, swore he had seen no one. Poole, clutching his notebook, muttered about the manor's guardian, a figure from legend said to protect its secrets. As the search began, Poirot pulled Hastings aside. "The note, it is a distraction. but it confirms one thing. The killer knows we are close. This order of the Raven, it is the key. We must find Miss Duval before the night is out. The manor's halls echoed with footsteps as the search parties fanned out. Poirot, ever methodical, returned to the east wing, his torch sweeping the walls for further clues. In a dusty alcove, he found a small, carved raven, its beak pointing to a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a scrap of fabric-red silk, matching Miss Duval's gown. "Hastings," Poirot said, holding up the fabric. "She was here, or someone wishes us to believe so." The mirror, the passage, the raven all point to a mind that revels in games. But Poirot, he does not play games. He solves them. As the clock struck 11, the storm outside reached a fever pitch, lightning illuminating the manor's Gothic spires. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the clues: the smuggling ring, the order of the Raven, the empty safe, and now Miss Duval's disappearance. The killer was circling, tightening the noose, but Poirot was ready to strike. In a quiet moment, he turned to Hastings, his voice low but resolute. "The ghost in the mirror, mon ami, is no spectre. It is a man or woman who watches, who waits, and who kills to protect their secrets. Tomorrow we shall confront Lady Evelyn. Her husband lives, as I suspect. She holds the final piece of this puzzle. For now, we guard our steps, for the shadows of Ravenwood are watching." The night stretched on, each hour heavy with the weight of secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot's little gray cells worked tirelessly, weaving the threads of the mystery into a pattern only he could see. The ghost in the mirror was no phantom, but a very human adversary, one whose next move would bring them face to face with Hercule Poirot's unrelenting pursuit of the truth. Chapter 8. The hidden passage. The storm outside Ravenwood Manor had not relented. Its ferocity, a mirror to the turmoil within. Its rain lashed against the ancient stone walls, and the wind howled through the eaves as if the manor itself were protesting the secrets it held. Hercule Poirot stood in the dimly lit east wing, his polished shoes tapping softly on the creaking floorboards. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. But Poirot's mind was razor-sharp, cutting through the haze of mystery that enveloped the house. His discovery of the peephole mirror in the previous chapter had ignited his curiosity, and now, as he traced his fingers along the ornate frame, he felt the thrill of a new revelation beckoning Captain Hastings. Ever the loyal companion hovered nearby, his brow furrowed with unease. "Poirot, this place gives me the creeps," he muttered, glancing at the flickering shadows cast by the single oil lamp they carried. "Ghosts, secret societies, blackmail dash, it all. It's like something out of a Gothic novel." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Mon ami, the Gothic is merely the human heart dressed in dramatic shadows. There are no ghosts here, only truths cloaked in deception. This mirror," he tapped the frame lightly, "is a window into the mind of our culprit. I, Hercule Poirot, shall open it." He pressed against the mirror's edge, and with a soft click, a panel slid aside, revealing a narrow, cobweb-draped passage. A chill draft swept out, carrying the scent of damp stone and something metallic, iron, perhaps, or blood. Poirot's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Voila," he said softly. "The manor yields its secrets." Hastings peered into the dark, his hand instinctively resting on the revolver he carried, though Poirot had repeatedly chided him for such reliance on brute force. "Are we going in there?" he asked, his voice betraying a mix of excitement and dread. "But of course," Poirot replied, adjusting his hat with a flourish. "The truth does not come to us, Hastings. We must pursue it, even into the shadows." The passage was oppressively narrow, forcing Poirot to sidle along with care, his immaculate suit brushing against the rough stone walls. Hastings followed, muttering about the inadvisability of exploring without a proper torch. The lamp's feeble glow illuminated only a few feet ahead, revealing a descending staircase carved into the rock. Each step echoed with a hollow thud, as if the manor's foundations were hollowed out by secrets as they descended. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the case. The butler's murder, the attacks on the scholar, and the colonel, the smuggled jewels. The cryptic puzzle boxes all pointed to a meticulously orchestrated plot. The peephole mirror suggested someone had been watching the guests, but who and why? The actress's disappearance, her note proclaiming, "I know too much," was the latest thread in this tangled web. Poirot suspected she was alive, perhaps hidden somewhere within the manor's labyrinthine depths. And this passage might lead him to her. The staircase ended abruptly at a heavy oak door, its surface scarred with age and reinforced with iron bands. A rusty lock hung from its latch, but to Poirot's surprise, it was unfastened. He pushed the door open, revealing a cavernous chamber lit by a single lantern hanging from a chain. The air was damp, and the faint drip of water echoed. In the distance, the chamber was cluttered with crates, their wooden surfaces branded with unfamiliar symbols, and a rough-hewn table stood at the center, strewn with papers and a tarnished candelabrum. "Good heavens," Hastings whispered, stepping inside. "What is this place?" Poirot's eyes darted across the room, cataloging every detail. A sanctuary for secrets, mon ami. A place where the past and present conspire. He moved to the table, his gloved fingers sifting through the papers. Most were faded invoices detailing shipments of antiquities to obscure ports, but one caught his eye-coded message written in a spidery hand. "Midnight brings the reckoning. The guardian watches, but the shadow strikes." Poirot's lips pursed. "The guardian again," he murmured, recalling the scholar's tale of a mythical protector of the manor's secrets. "And a reckoning at midnight is no coincidence. Hastings, the killer, is planning their final move." Before Hastings could respond, a muffled cry echoed from the far corner of the chamber. Poirot's head snapped up, his senses alert. "Did you hear that?" he asked, already moving toward the sound. Hastings gripped his revolver tighter. It sounded like a woman. Could it be Miss Clara Vane, the actress? Poirot finished, his voice calm but urgent. "Come, Hastings, we must be swift." They navigated through the maze of crates, the lantern casting grotesque shadows that seemed to dance mockingly. The cry came again, fainter but unmistakable, leading them to a rusted iron gate set into the wall. Beyond it, in a small alcove, lay Clara Vane, her wrists and ankles bound with coarse rope, her glamorous attire torn and streaked with dirt. Her eyes widened as she saw Poirot, a mixture of relief and terror flooding her face. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, her voice hoarse. "Thank God you've come. He tried to kill me." Poirot knelt beside her, his nimble fingers working at the knots. "Calm yourself, mademoiselle. You are safe now. Who is this he you speak of?" Clara's breath hitched, her eyes darting nervously. "Victor Carver. He dragged me here, said I knew too much about his father. He's mad, I tell you." Hastings frowned, helping Poirot free her. "Victor. But why would he silence Hastings?" Poirot said sharply, his mind racing. Clara's accusation fit neatly with Victor's suspicious behavior. Furtive glances, the secret affair with the actress, his knowledge of his father's crimes. Yet something nagged at Poirot's intuition. The puzzle was too perfect, the pieces aligning too neatly. He helped Clara to her feet, noting the way her hands trembled. "Not entirely from fear, Mademoiselle Vane," he said, his voice gentle but probing. "Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail, if you please." Clara swallowed, brushing a strand of disheveled hair from her face. "It was after dinner last night. Couldn't sleep, so I went to the East Wing, looking for, well, something to clear my head. Victor caught me near the mirror. He was furious, said I'd been prying into things that weren't my business. He grabbed me, and the next thing I knew, I was being dragged through that passage. He tied me up here, said he'd deal with me later. Monsieur Poirot, I thought I was done for. Poirot's eyes narrowed, his little gray cells working furiously. In this note, he said, producing the crumpled paper found in her room, I know too much. You wrote it? Yes. Clara hesitated, then nodded. I slipped it under my door before he took me. I hoped someone would find it, realize I was in danger. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who looked skeptical. A remarkable feat, mademoiselle, to write and place a note while being overpowered, Poirot said, his tone neutral, but his eyes sharp. Clara flushed, her composure faltering. I was desperate. You don't know what it's like, being trapped here with a killer. Indeed, Poirot said, guiding her toward the table. Sit, mademoiselle. You must rest. Hastings, fetch some water from that flask by the crates. As Hastings moved to comply, Poirot's gaze swept the chamber again, landing on a small object glinting in the shadows, a silver cufflink, engraved with the initials VC. He picked it up, turning it over in his gloved hand. Victor Carver, he murmured, though his tone suggested doubt rather than certainty. They escorted Clara back through the passage, her steps unsteady but determined. As they emerged into the east wing, the manor's oppressive silence greeted them, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Poirot instructed Hastings to take Clara to her room and ensure her safety, but not before whispering, "Keep watch, mon ami. Trust no one, not even the damsel in distress." Once alone, Poirot returned to the dining hall where the remaining guests had gathered, their faces pale and drawn. Lady Evelyn sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, her eyes fixed on the chandelier above. Victor paced near the window, his hands clenched into fists. The colonel, still recovering from his attack, leaned heavily on a cane, while the scholar scribbled nervously in a notebook. Poirot cleared his throat, commanding their attention. Mesdames et messieurs, we stand at a crossroads in this affair. Miss Vane has been found, alive but shaken, in a hidden chamber beneath the manor. She accuses Monsieur Victor Carver of her abduction. A gasp rippled through the room. Victor's head snapped up, his face a mask of outrage. That's absurd. I'd never touched her. She's lying, Poirot, and you know it? Lady Evelyn's voice cut through the tension, cold and sharp. Victor, control yourself, Monsieur Poirot. Surely you don't believe this. This actress's theatrics. Poirot raised a hand, silencing them. Belief is not my currency, Lady Evelyn. Evidence is. And evidence I have found. He held up the cufflink, its silver surface catching the chandelier's light. Pieced, this was discovered in the chamber where Miss Vane was held. It bears the initials VC. Explain, if you please, Monsieur Carver. Victor's face drained of color. That's yes, but I lost it days ago. Someone must have planted it there to frame me. The colonel snorted, leaning forward. Convenient, lad. You've been skulking about this place like a thief. I wouldn't put it past you. Enough. Poirot's voice was a whipcrack, commanding silence. The truth is not served by accusations flung like stones. Monsieur Victor, you claim innocence? Very well. But I must ask, where were you last night, between the hours of 10 and midnight? Victor hesitated, his eyes flickering to Lady Evelyn. I was in my room, reading. A poor alibi, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, and one easily disproved, I think. But let us move forward. The coded message I found in the chamber speaks of a reckoning at midnight. I propose we prepare for this moment, for I believe our killer will strike again. The scholar looked up, his voice trembling. Midnight, tonight. But what does it mean, Monsieur Poirot? Means, Poirot said, his eyes gleaming, that we must set a trap. The killer believes they control this game, but they have underestimated Hercule Poirot. We shall gather here in this very hall at midnight, and I shall unmask the one who pulls the strings. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of Poirot's words settling over them like a shroud. Kylie. Evelyn's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Victor stormed out, muttering under his breath, while the colonel and scholar retreated to their corners, each lost in thought. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Poirot retreated to his room to prepare. He sat at a small desk, his notebook, open, his pen moving swiftly as he outlined the case's threads: the butler's poisoning, puzzle boxes, the smuggling ring, the attacks, the actress's abduction, the coded message. Each clue was a piece of a larger mosaic, and Poirot was determined to see the full picture. Hastings returned, his expression grim. Clara settled, but she's terrified. Poirot keeps insisting Victor's the killer. Don't know what to make of it. Poirot nodded, his eyes distant. She plays her part well, Hastings. Too well, perhaps, but we shall see. Tonight, we end this charade. As midnight approached, the dining hall was a stage set for drama. The chandelier glowed, its crystals scattering light across the room, creating the dancing shadows of the cryptic note. Poirot had instructed the guests to gather, each seated at the long table, their faces a gallery of fear, suspicion, and defiance. Clara, pale but composed, sat beside Hastings, her eyes darting nervously. Victor glared across the table, his jaw set. Lady Evelyn maintained her icy calm, while the colonel and scholar fidgeted, their nerves frayed. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice steady. Tonight, we face the reckoning promised by our unseen adversary. The killer believes they have outwitted us, but they have made a fatal error. They have left a trail, and I, Hercule Poirot, have followed it. He paused, letting the tension build. The butler's death was no accident, nor were the attacks on Monsieur le Colonel and the scholar. The smuggling ring, the puzzle boxes, the hidden chamber, all are threads in a tapestry of deceit. And now, Miss Vane's abduction points to a desperate act to silence a witness. But who is the weaver of this tapestry? Clara's voice broke the silence, trembling but clear. It's Victor. I told you, he attacked me. Victor leapt to his feet. Lies. You're trying to save your own skin, Clara. Silence. Poirot's command was absolute. The truth does not emerge from chaos. Let us examine the evidence. The cufflink found in the chamber implicates Monsieur Victor. Yet, he claims, it was stolen. Possible, yes, but convenient. The coded message speaks of a guardian and a shadow. I propose the guardian is the mastermind of the smuggling ring, and the shadow is their enforcer, the killer. The colonel cleared his throat. If you're suggesting I'm involved, Poirot, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's admitted to knowing about the smuggling, but murder? Never. Poirot's eyes twinkled. I do not accuse you, Colonel. Not yet, but consider. The chamber was a place of secrets, accessible only through the passage. Who knew of it? Who had the means to abduct Miss Vane and plant the cufflink? Lady Evelyn's voice was sharp. You're implying one of us is a master criminal, Monsieur Poirot. It's preposterous, is it? Poirot countered, his gaze locking onto hers. The manor holds many secrets, Lady Evelyn. Your husband's disappearance, for instance. A man obsessed with puzzles, rumored to have faked his death. Perhaps he's closer than we think. A gasp escaped Clara, and Victor's face went white. The scholar dropped his pen, his hands shaking. Colonel muttered something under his breath, but Poirot pressed on. I have set a trap, he said, his voice low and deliberate. In the chamber, I left a false clue, a map, suggesting the location of the smuggled jewels. The killer, greedy or desperate, will seek it, and I have ensured the passage is watched. As if on cue, a commotion erupted outside the dining hall. Footsteps echoed, followed by a shout. Hastings leaped to his feet, revolver in hand, but Poirot remained calm, motioning for the others to stay seated. Moments later, two of the manor's groundskeeper's burly men Poirot had enlisted dragged a struggling figure into the room. It was the groundskeeper Poirot had seen lurking near the manor, his weathered face twisted in defiance. "Found him in the passage, sir," one of the groundskeepers said, holding up a crumpled map. "He was after this." Poirot took the map, his expression unreadable. "Marcy, and now, monsieur, you will explain yourself." The groundskeeper spat on the floor. "I don't answer to you, foreigner. I was just doing my job, checking the grounds." "Your job," Poirot said, his voice laced with irony, "to skulk in hidden passages at midnight. And, monsieur, you are more than a groundskeeper. You are the shadow, the one who strikes when the guardian commands." The room erupted in chaos. Victor shouting denials, Clara sobbing, Lady Evelyn demanding silence. But Poirot's voice cut through it all, steady and unrelenting. "Man," he said, pointing to the groundskeeper, "is connected to the smuggling ring. But he does not act alone. The guardian, the true mastermind, is among us, and tonight I shall name them." The clock struck midnight, its chimes reverberating through the hall. Poirot's eyes swept the room, his mind a whirl of connections, deductions, and certainties. The trap had been sprung, but the final piece of the puzzle remained. Who was the guardian? And what was their reckoning? Chapter 9. The Midnight Reckoning. The air in Ravenwood Manor's dining hall hung heavy with anticipation. The flickering light of the grand chandelier casting jagged shadows across the polished mahogany table. The storm outside had relented, leaving only the occasional rumble of thunder to punctuate the oppressive silence. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small, meticulous figure commanding the room with an authority that belied his stature. His meticulously groomed mustache twitched slightly, a telltale sign of his mind racing through the labyrinth of clues he had unraveled over the past days. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood to his right, his earnest face taut with nervous energy. Around the table sat the remaining guests, Lady Evelyn Carver, her regal poise fraying at the edges; Victor, her brooding nephew, his eyes darting with unease; the colonel, his weathered face grim but defiant; the scholar, pale but alert, clutching a notebook as if it were a lifeline; and the actress, her glamorous facade cracked her hands, trembling as she clutched a glass of water. Poirot's eyes, sharp and unyielding, surveyed each face, reading the subtle tales of guilt, fear, and defiance. The room felt like a stage. The chandeliers light a spotlight on a drama about to reach its climax. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked closer to midnight, each second amplifying the tension. Poirot had orchestrated this moment with precision, setting a trap to lure the killer into revealing themselves. The coded message found in the underground chamber had promised a reckoning at midnight, and Poirot intended to deliver it. "Mies, Amos," Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant, cutting through the silence like a finely honed blade. "Tonight, we stand at the precipice of truth. The events at Ravenwood Manor have been a puzzle most intricate, a tapestry woven with deception, greed, and betrayal. But Hercule Poirot does not falter before such complexities. None. He unravels them, thread by thread, until the pattern is clear." Hastings shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the guests. He had seen Poirot in this mode before, the master detective weaving a narrative that would expose the guilty. Yet the stakes at Ravenwood felt higher, the web of motives denser. The butler's murder, the scholar's attack, the colonel's assault. Tactus's kidnapping all were pieces of a puzzle that Poirot now held in his hands. Let us begin, Poirot continued, pacing slowly along the table, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor. The murder of the butler, Mr. Grayson, was no random act. It was the spark that ignited this conflagration of secrets. He was poisoned, his body found clutching a puzzle box that, as we discovered, held a note. The truth lies where shadows dance. This clue led us to the East Wing, to a portrait, to a ledger, to a smuggling ring that has cast its shadow over this manor for years. Lady Evelyn's eyes narrowed, but she remained silent, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Victor's jaw clenched, and the actress let out a small, involuntary gasp. The colonel's gaze was fixed on Poirot, unblinking, while the scholar scribbled furiously in his notebook. But the butler's death was only the beginning, Poirot said, pausing for effect. The attacks on the scholar and the colonel, the kidnapping of Mademoiselle Clairthies, were not mere accidents. They were calculated moves to protect a secret, to silence those who came too close to the truth. And that truth, Mies Amos, is far darker than any of you may have imagined. He stopped pacing and turned to face the group, his hands clasped behind his back. Let us consider the smuggling ring. The ledger we found in the chandelier revealed transactions of great wealth, jewels, artifacts, perhaps even secrets of a more dangerous nature. But who was at the heart of this enterprise? Who stood to gain the most from its continuation, and who would kill to protect it? The colonel cleared his throat, his voice gruff. I've told you, Poirot, I had no part in murder. Yes, I knew of the smuggling old contacts from my military days, nothing more. But I'm no killer. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Patience, Colonel. We shall come to you in time. For now, let us consider another figure, one who has remained in the shadows, orchestrating this deadly game. A figure who, I propose, is none other than Mr. Reginald Carver, the late husband of Lady Evelyn. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Lady Evelyn's face paled, her lips parting as if to protest, but no words came. Victor shot to his feet, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. That's absurd, he cried. My uncle is dead. Everyone knows that. Do they, Monsieur Victor? Poirot's voice was soft but cutting. Or is it merely what you were led to believe? The portrait in the East Wing, the ledger, the secret passage point to a man who did not die, but instead vanished, faking his death to protect his empire. An empire of crime, built on the smuggling of precious goods through Ravenwood Manor. The actress, Claire, leaned forward, her voice trembling. But why would he kill Grayson? Why attack us? Poirot's eyes gleamed. An excellent question. Mademoiselle Grayson, the butler, was a loyal servant, but he was also observant. Too observant, perhaps. He discovered Mr. Carver's survival, perhaps stumbled upon a clue, a letter, a sighting, a whispered conversation. To protect his secret, Mr. Carver, someone acting on his behalf, silenced him with poison. The puzzle box was a message, a taunt meant to lead us astray, or perhaps to point us toward the truth. Hastings, unable to contain himself, blurted out, But Poirot, how could Carver still be here? We've seen no sign of him. Poirot smiled faintly. Have we not, mon ami? Consider the groundskeeper, a man who moves silently through the estate, unnoticed by most. A man who knows every corner of Ravenwood, who has access to its secrets. A man whose face, though weathered, bears a striking resemblance to the portrait in the East Wing. The room fell silent, the weight of Poirot's words sinking in. Lady Evelyn's hands trembled, and she gripped the edge of the table. This is preposterous, she said, her voice low but venomous. My husband is dead. I buried him myself. Did you, madame? Poirot's tone was gentle but probing. Or did you bury a lie? a coffin filled with stones, perhaps, while your husband slipped away to continue his work in the shadows. The smuggling ring required a mastermind, someone with cunning and resources. Who better than a man presumed dead, free to operate without suspicion? Victor's face twisted with anger. You're accusing my aunt of conspiracy. She's the victim here, Poirot. Her husband's disappearance ruined her life. Poirot raised an eyebrow. Ruined Monsieur Victor, or enriched. The wealth of Ravenwood Manor has not diminished, despite its master's death. The jewels we found in the greenhouse, the transactions and the ledgers someone has been managing this enterprise with great care. And who better than Lady Evelyn, the mistress of the manor, to oversee it? Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed with indignation. I dare you, Monsieur Poirot. I'm endured scandal, loss, and betrayal, and now you accuse me of such vile acts. Poirot remained unruffled. Accuse no one, madame, without evidence. But let us examine the facts. The butler's murder occurred in the library, where you were seen by a maid shortly before the scream. The puzzle box, a creation of your husband's design, was found in Grayson's hand. Hidden in the chandelier, bore your initials in its margins, a detail I noticed when decoding it. In the secret passage leading to the chamber where Mademoiselle Claire was held, was accessible only to someone with intimate knowledge of the manor. Someone like you. The scholar, who had been silent, spoke up, his voice quavering. But what about the attacks on me and the colonel? Why would Lady Evelyn target us? Poirot turned to him, his expression softening. You, monsieur, were a threat because of your knowledge. Your research into the manor's history brought you too close to the truth about the smuggling ring and its connection to a secret society. The torn page you clutched, with its map to the greenhouse, was a clue you uncovered. The killer could not allow to be shared. As for the colonel, his military contacts made him a liability. He knew too much, even if he claims otherwise. The colonel pounded his fist on the table. I told you I was framed. That knife beside MIT was planted. He turned to Lady Evelyn, his gaze unrelenting. Madame, you have played a dangerous game. You knew your husband was alive. You knew of the smuggling, and when Grayson threatened to expose it, you acted, You poisoned him using cyanide from the greenhouse where you cultivated rare plants. You orchestrated the attacks to deflect suspicion, to frame others, and you used the puzzle boxes, your husband's own creation, to cast doubt on him, to ensure that if he betrayed you, he would take the fall. Lady Evelyn's face was ashen, her hands trembling violently. This is madness, she whispered. I loved Reginald. I would never love, Madame, can drive us to desperate acts, Poirot said, his voice softening but unyielding. You loved him, yes, but you also loved the power, the wealth, the legacy of Ravenwood. When Grayson discovered the truth, you could not allow it to destroy you. You killed him, and you manipulated the others to protect your secret. The room was silent, the weight of Poirot's accusation crushing. Victor stared at his aunt, his eyes wide with disbelief. The actress wept softly. The colonel's face was grim, and the scholar's pen had stopped, his hand frozen. Carver broke the silence, his voice a low growl. She's guilty, Poirot. She planned it all. I was her pawn, nothing more. Poirot shook his head. Nan, Monsieur Carver, you are no pawn. You are a partner in this crime, but not the mastermind. The evidence points to Lady Evelyn, but your hands are not clean. You faked your death. You ran the smuggling ring. You attacked those who threatened your empire. But it was Lady Evelyn who wielded the poison, who set this deadly game in motion. Lady Evelyn rose, her voice shaking with rage and fear. You cannot prove this. You have nothing but theories. Poirot's smile was cold. Theories, Madame. Nan, I had the maid's testimony, the ledger, The cyanide traces in your greenhouse, the monogrammed handkerchief found near Grayson's body, your handkerchief, and I have the confession of Monsieur Carver, who, I suspect, will say much more to save himself." Carver's eyes widened, and he lunged forward, only to be restrained by the constables. "You won't pin this on me alone, Evelyn. Tell them the truth." Lady Evelyn's composure shattered, her face crumpling as she sank back into her chair. "I did it for Ravenwood," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "For the legacy, for the family. Grayson was going to ruin us. I had no choice." The admission hung in the air, a final, devastating truth. Victor buried his face in his hands, the actress sobbed, and the colonel shook his head in disbelief. The scholar, ever the chronicler, began writing again, his pen scratching furiously. Poirot nodded, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "The truth, mes amis, is never hidden for long. Hercule Poirot sees all. In the little gray cells, they do not fail." As the constables led Carver and Lady Evelyn away, the dining hall seemed to exhale, the shadows retreating under the chandelier's light. Hastings clapped Poirot on the shoulder, his voice thick with admiration. "You've done it again, old chap. I don't know how you manage it." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "It is merely a matter of order and method, mon ami. The human heart is complex, but its secrets are no match for Hercule Poirot." As the clock ticked past midnight, the manor felt lighter, its secrets laid bare, but Poirot knew the final truth awaited, a truth that would tie every thread together in the morning. "Light." "Indeed," Poirot said, nodding, "and that is precisely why I began to suspect a deeper game. The attacks were not merely to silence, but to confuse, to cast suspicion on others. The killer is clever, mes amis, but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot." The clock struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the hall like a tolling bell. The guests froze, their eyes locked on Poirot. He had promised a reckoning, and the moment had arrived. "Now," Poirot said, his voice rising, "let us bring the shadows into the light. I set a trap this evening, placing a false clue in the secret passage note, suggesting I had uncovered the killer's identity. I knew the guilty party would act to protect themselves. Can't they did." He gestured toward the door, where a faint scuffle could be heard. The guests turned, their faces a mixture of dread and curiosity. Its constables, summoned earlier by Poirot, entered, dragging a struggling figure between them. It was the groundskeeper, his weathered face contorted with fury, his clothes disheveled from his attempt to flee. "Mr. Reginald Carver," Poirot declared, his voice ringing with certainty. "Or, as you have been known these past days, the groundskeeper. You faked your death 10 years ago to escape the law, to continue your smuggling empire from the shadows. Go, but Grayson, your loyal butler, discovered your secret. He threatened to expose you, and so you poisoned him, leaving the puzzle box as a diversion. You attacked the scholar and the colonel to silence their suspicions, and you kidnapped Mademoiselle Claire when she overheard your plans. But you could not outwit Hercule Poirot." Carver's eyes blazed with defiance. "You have no proof," he spat. "This is all conjecture." "No proof," Poirot said, his voice calm but steely. "The portrait in the east wing bears your face, monsieur, though aged by time and secrecy. The ledger contains your handwriting, confirmed by a sample from an old letter I found in the library. The puzzle boxes, your own creation, were designed to protect your secrets or to betray your accomplice. And tonight, when you fled through the secret passage, you left behind a glove, monogrammed with your initials." The constables held up a worn leather glove. The initials are C, clearly visible. Carver's shoulders slumped, but his eyes darted toward Lady Evelyn, a silent accusation in his gaze. "Speak, monsieur," Poirot said. "Tell us the truth, or shall I reveal the final piece of the puzzle?" Carver's voice was low, venomous. "It wasn't me alone. She knew everything. She planned it all, Evelyn. She wanted the wealth, the power. She told me to kill Grayson, to silence the others. She's the mastermind. Lady Evelyn rose, her face a mask of fury. How dare you, you coward? You think you can pin this on me? The room erupted in chaos. Victor shouting, the actress gasping, the scholar scribbling frantically. Poirot raised his hands, restoring order. Enough, commanded. Monsieur Carver, your attempt to deflect blame is noted, but it will not save you, nor will it condemn Lady Evelyn yet. For there is one final question to answer. Who truly wielded the poison, the knife, the rope? Who orchestrated this deadly game? He turned to the group, his eyes piercing. The answer lies not in the shadows, but in the motives. Greed, fear, loyalty, betrayal. These are the threads that bind this mystery, and I, Hercule Poirot, have unraveled them. The chandelier flickered, casting a shadow across Lady Evelyn's face, and for a moment her composure wavered. Poirot's gaze locked onto her, and the room held its breath, waiting for the final truth to emerge. The dining hall seemed to shrink under the weight of Poirot's words. The air thick with unspoken accusations. Lady Evelyn's hands trembled, but her chin lifted defiantly, her aristocratic bearing refusing to crumble entirely. Victor's eyes darted between his aunt and the groundskeeper, his face a storm of confusion and betrayal. The actress, Claire, clutched her glass so tightly it seemed it might shatter, while the colonel's jaw tightened, his military discipline barely holding his emotions in check. The scholar, ever the observer, paused his scribbling, his pen hovering as if sensing the climax of a tale he could scarcely believe. Poirot paced slowly, his movements deliberate, each step a punctuation mark in a narrative he was weaving. Let us reconstruct the events. Mise Amos, he said, his voice steady, almost hypnotic. The butler, Grayson, was poisoned with cyanide, a method requiring access to rare substances and knowledge of their use. The puzzle box in his hand was no mere decoration. It was a message, a clue designed to mislead, or perhaps to point to the truth. But whose truth? Monsieur Carver's, or another's? He paused, turning to face Carver, who stood flanked by the constables, his weathered face a mask of defiance. Monsieur Carver, you claim Lady Evelyn orchestrated the murder, yet your own actions betray you. The glove, the ledger, the secret passage point to your presence, your involvement. But I suspect you are not the sole architect of this crime. Nan, there is another hand at work, one that has guided this deadly game with precision. Carver's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, his silence a challenge. Poirot turned to Lady Evelyn, whose composure was fraying, her lips pressed into a thin line. Madame, he said softly, you have maintained your innocence with great conviction, yet the evidence suggests otherwise. The maid's testimony places you near the library at the time of Grayson's death. The ledger bears your initials. In the puzzle boxes, those intricate creations of your husband, were they not also known to you? Did you not share his passion for riddles, for secrets? Lady Evelyn's voice was icy. You overstep, Monsieur Poirot. Flubbed my husband, and his death devastated me. I had no part in his schemes, nor in these murders. Poirot raised an eyebrow, undeterred. Love, madame, can be a powerful motive for protection, for betrayal, for murder. Let us consider the possibility that you discovered your husband's survival. Perhaps you learned of his smuggling, his faked death. Did you confront him? Did you join him? Or did you seek to control the empire he left behind? Victor slammed his fist on the table, his voice raw with emotion. Stop this, Poirot. My aunt is no criminal. She suffered enough losing her husband, living under this cloud of scandal. You can't accuse her without proof. Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. Monsieur Victor, your loyalty is admirable, but it blinds you. The truth does not bend to sentiment. Let us examine the attacks. The scholar, Monsieur Langley, was struck in the greenhouse, clutching a torn page of map to the smuggled jewels. The colonel was attacked with a knife, left to appear guilty. Mademoiselle Claire was kidnapped, bound in the secret chamber. Each act was designed to silence, to confuse, to protect the true secret, the survival of Reginald Carver and the continuation of his smuggling ring. The actress, Claire, spoke up, her voice trembling but clear. I told you, it was Victor who attacked me. Saw him in the passage. He tied me up, left me there. Victor's face flushed with anger. That's a lie. I was in my room. I saw someone in the passage. Yes, but it wasn't me who attacked you. It was him. He pointed at Carver, his voice shaking with conviction. Poirot raised a hand, silencing the outburst. Mademoiselle Claire, your fear is genuine, but your memory may be clouded. The passage was dark, the figure cloaked. You assumed it was Victor because of your affair with him, because of the guilt and fear it brought. But I propose another possibility. The figure was Monsieur Carver, acting to protect his secret. Carver's lips curled into a sneer. Grasping Poirot, you have no proof I was in that passage. Poirot smiled faintly, a glint of triumph in his eyes. No proof, monsieur? Then explain the mud on your boots found in the passage, matching the soil from the greenhouse. Explain the rope hidden in your quarters, identical to that used to bind Mademoiselle Claire. Explain the key found in your pocket, which fits the second puzzle box you claimed to know nothing about. The constables produced the items, laying them on the table. A pair of muddy boots, a coil of rope, a small brass key. Carver's defiance wavered, his eyes flickering with something close to panic. But there is more, Poirot continued, his voice rising. The puzzle boxes themselves are the key to this mystery. They were designed by Monsieur Carver, yes, but they were not merely decorative. They were a safeguard, a means to protect or expose. The first box contained the note, "The truth lies where shadows dance." The second, found in the colonel's room, contained a key to an empty safe. Why empty? Because the true treasure, the jewels, the secrets, had already been moved. By whom? By the one who knew the manor best, who controlled its secrets. Chapter 10. The final truth. The air in Ravenwood Manor's grand dining hall hung heavy, thick with the weight of secrets and the faint, lingering scent of candle wax. The chandelier above cast its golden glow, its prisms scattering light across the polished mahogany table, where the remaining guests sat in uneasy silence. Hercule Poirot stood at the head of the table, his small, precise figure commanding the room with an authority that belied his stature. Its meticulously waxed mustache twitched slightly, a sign to Captain Hastings, seated to his right, that the little gray cells were at their peak. The storm outside had quieted to a mournful drizzle, but the tension within the manor crackled like static before a lightning strike. Poirot's eyes, sharp and unyielding, swept over the assembled company. Lady Evelyn Carver, her regal posture fraying at the edges. Victor, her nephew, whose brooding intensity had given way to a nervous fidgeting. The colonel, his face a map of weathered lines, clutching a glass of brandy as if it were an anchor. The scholar, pale but alert, his fingers tracing the bandage on his arm. And the actress, rescued from the hidden chamber, her glamorous facade replaced by a raw, haunted expression. The groundskeeper, revealed as Lady Evelyn's supposedly deceased husband. Albert Carver stood in cuffs near the doorway, guarded by 2 local constables, summoned by Poirot's earlier telegram. The man's grizzled face was a mask of defiance, but his eyes flickered with something akin to fear. "Miss Amos," Poirot began, his voice soft yet piercing, "we have arrived at the denouement of this most intricate puzzle. The threads of deceit, woven so carefully, have unraveled. The truth, it is like the light of this chandelier, brilliant, unyielding, and impossible to ignore once it is revealed. Lady Evelyn's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Her hands folded primly in her lap. Victor shot her a glance, his expression a mix of betrayal and confusion. The colonel cleared his throat, as if to speak, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Let us begin," Poirot continued, pacing slowly along the table's edge, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. The murder of the butler. Mr. Grayson was no random act of violence. It was the spark that ignited this conflagration of secrets. But to understand the why, we must first understand the who and the what. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Hastings leaned forward, his notebook open. Though he hadn't written a word in minutes, captivated by Poirot's unraveling of the mystery. "The puzzle boxes," Poirot said, producing the second box from his pocket and placing it on the table. Its intricate carvings gleamed under the chandelier's light. They were not mere trinkets. They were the key to the manor's darkest secret, designed by a man who thrived on games of the mind of Bert Carver. He gestured toward the groundskeeper, whose jaw clenched at the mention of his name. The actress gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "But he's been dead for years," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "Nah, mademoiselle," Poirot corrected gently. "He has been very much alive, hiding in plain sight as the groundskeeper, tending the gardens of Ravenwood while guarding his empire. An empire of smuggling, built on jewels and secrets, concealed within the very walls of this manor." The colonel shifted uncomfortably, his brandy glass clinking against the table. "See here, Poirot," he growled. "I told you I had no part in murder. Smuggling, perhaps youthful indiscretion, long behind me." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, Colonel, your involvement was minor, a dalliance with a smuggling ring in your military days. But you were not the architect, nor were you, Victor, though your father's sins cast a long shadow over you." Victor's hands balled into fists. "My father was a good man," he said, his voice low and strained. "He made mistakes, but he didn't deserve to be dragged into this." Poirot nodded sympathetically. "Your loyalty, it is admirable, mon jeune ami. But the truth, it does not bend to loyalty. Your father, entangled in the smuggling ring, vanished not by choice, but by necessity. So one who ensured his silent sand. The butler's was none other than Lady Evelyn Carver." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Lady Evelyn's composure shattered, her eyes widening as she rose from her chair. "This is outrageous," she cried, her voice sharp as a blade. "How dare you accuse me, Monsieur Poirot? I am the victim here, trapped in this web of my husband's making." Poirot held up a hand, his expression unyielding. "Sit, madame. The time for pretense is over. Let us reconstruct the events, step by step, with the clarity of Poirot's little gray cells." He began to pace again, his voice steady and deliberate. "The butler, Mr. Grayson, was a loyal servant, but he was also observant. He discovered Albert Carver's true identity, perhaps through an overheard conversation, perhaps by recognizing the man he served years ago. He found the first puzzle box, a creation of Albert's, meant to safeguard the secrets of the smuggling ring. But Grayson, he was curious. He opened the box and found the note. The truth lies where shadows dance. He began to investigate. And that, mise amis, was his fatal mistake." Poirot turned to Lady Evelyn, his gaze piercing. "You, madame, could not allow Grayson to expose your husband, nor could you risk the collapse of the empire you had both built. You poisoned him, using a rare toxin from the greenhouse, a toxin you cultivated yourself, hidden among the exotic plants you so lovingly tended." Lady Evelyn's face paled, but she said nothing. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "The puzzle box," Poirot continued, "was a misdirection. You placed it in Grayson's hand, to suggest he died trying to unlock its secrets. But you underestimated Hercule Poirot. The box was not the key, was the bait meant to distract from the true crime, your husband's survival and your complicity. The scholar, his voice weak but clear, interjected, "But the attacks on me and the Colonel, why? We had no part in this." Poirot nodded. "Precisement, monsieur. You had threats, not because of what you knew, but because of what you might discover." The scholar, with his knowledge of the manor's history, was too close to uncovering the secret society Albert Carver once led. The Colonel, with his military connections, might have recognized the smuggling patterns. "You are attacked, not to kill, but to silence, to scare you into retreat." The actress, her voice trembling, spoke up. "And me? Why was I taken?" Poirot's expression softened. "You, mademoiselle, were a pawn. Your indiscretions made you vulnerable to blackmail, but you also saw too much. You glimpsed Albert Carver in the East Wing, did you not? You suspected he was more than a groundskeeper? So, you were taken to the hidden chamber, bound to keep you silent until the reckoning could be completed." Albert Carver, silent until now, growled from the doorway. "You're wrong, Poirot. Evelyn didn't kill anyone. I did it. I'll to protect her, to protect what we built." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Nan, monsieur, okay, you are a man of cunning, but not of murder. You designed the puzzle boxes, yes, to protect your secrets. You hid in plain sight, yes, to maintain your empire. But the murder of Grayson, the attacks, the kidnapping, these were the work of a mind more ruthless, more desperate, and that mind belongs to your wife." Lady Evelyn's hands trembled, and she sank back into her chair. "You have no proof?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Poirot smiled faintly. "Ah, but I do, madame. The toxin in the greenhouse. It leaves a trace of faint residue on the hands of the one who handles it. I observed your gloves, stained with a peculiar green tint, hidden in your wardrobe. The maid, she confirmed you were near the library the night Grayson died, not in your room, as you claimed. And the coded ledger found in the chandelier bore your initials, not Albert's, in the final entry marking the transfer of the smuggled jewels to a buyer. You were not the victim, madame, you were the orchestrator." The room fell silent, the only sound the soft patter of rain against the windows. Victor's face crumpled, his voice breaking. "And Evelyn, you." Lady Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears, but her voice was steady when she finally spoke. "You don't understand, Victor. This manor, this family, was all I had left. Albert's disappearance left me alone, shamed, with nothing but whispers and debts. When he returned, hiding as the groundskeeper, we rebuilt everything. Smuggling. It was our salvation. Grayson threatened to destroy it all. Had no choice." Poirot's expression was one of pity, not triumph. "Madame, there is always a choice. You chose to take a life, to manipulate those around you, to weave a tapestry of lies. The puzzle boxes, they were Albert's warning to you, were they not? A failsafe, to expose you if he died? But you turned them into tools of deception." Albert's voice cracked. "I never meant for it to go this far, Poirot. I thought I could control it, keep her safe." Poirot shook his head. "It's a heart. It is a fragile thing, monsieur, but the truth, it is not. It stands firm like the oak in the storm." He turned to the constables. "Take Lady Evelyn into custody. The evidence, it is sufficient. The ledger, the toxin, the witnesses, they will speak for themselves." As the constables moved toward Lady Evelyn, she rose, her dignity returning like a cloak. "I did what I had to do," she said, her voice cold. "For Ravenwood. For my family." Victor buried his face in his hands, and the actress reached out to comfort him. The Colonel drained his brandy, his eyes fixed on the floor. The scholar, silent, stared at Poirot with a mixture of awe and sorrow as Lady Evelyn was led away. Poirot turned to Hastings, his voice low. Mon ami, the human heart. It is a puzzle more complex than any box. But order, it has been restored. The next morning, as the sun broke through the clouds, Poirot and Hastings stood on the steps of Ravenwood Manor, their bags packed. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet grass and renewal. The manor loomed behind them, its secrets laid bare, its ghosts quieted. What now, Poirot? Hastings asked, adjusting his hat. Back to London and a quieter life. Poirot chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling. Quieter, Hastings. Non. The world. It is full of puzzles, and Hercule Poirot, he is never far from the next one. They climbed into the waiting car, the gravel crunching under their feet. Ravenwood Manor receded into the distance. Poirot leaned back, his mind all ready, turning to the next challenge, the next truth waiting to be uncovered.